Hey folks, welcome back. Nako, it's time. And we haven't done this, gosh, I think since June. It's been a while. And our regular stalwart, Dumo Denga, is unavailable tonight. So we'll have to make do with Koketso Rezani. How's it going, brother? How you doing? It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
It's been a minute.
On that note, maybe I'll get this out the way immediately. I think I'm in line to take over that regular stalwart title from Dumo. So, yeah, if there's a trophy that I need to put in my cabinet, I'm just saying.
A trophy. Okay, well, we'll have to go collect it from Dumo's house. But you can put it up.
Enough.
All right. Now, look. Well, look. Look. You've got a day job. You're frequently busy. That's one of the reasons why I moved this to 8 o'clock is to try to fit better in people's schedules. But yeah. So Nolu was going to join us tonight, but she's been unavoidably detained at work, I believe, and so she might join us late. For those who are wondering, for those of you just tuning in for the first time, this is Nako. This is a conversation with like-minded folks about issues of concern, particularly in South Africa, but not exclusively. We also talk about other issues around the world. The U.S. Who knows? Might even delve into the Middle East today. It depends whether Koketso wants to go there or not. But it is on my platform, but we're co-hosts, and it's a conversation. I do tend to lead it, but we can go in any direction that folks on the program want to go. So Koketso, it's been a while. You know, I was in South Africa for a month, July and August, and then I came back for about a week and did some consulting, and then left to go to France for a month. So my credit cards have revolted. They've all melted. I can't pull them out of my billfold. They're stuck. They're tired of being used. My credit cards have accused me of uncompensated labor on their part. They've worked so hard, but I'm back now, and it's good to be back. And I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to meet when I was in South Africa this time. It was pretty hectic. We all gave it a good college try, but it didn't happen out. But so what's going on with you? What are you up to? You're usually a pretty busy guy.
Yeah, same old, same old. I think when you were here, I was mostly not in the country as well. So yeah, like I just saw messages coming in thinking, yeah, I guess that's the story of my life now. No complaints, of course. It's better to be busy than to not be busy, because when you're not busy, you've got idle hands. And yeah, there's the Christian in me again, spitting out proverbs about exactly what idle hands get up to. Funny enough, same idle hands are always also available hands, and their availability is not always available for productive purposes. Long story short, when you're sitting at home doing nothing, you can quickly become, let's say, open to the idea of joining useless marches for frivolous things, as we see with many political rallies, etc., etc.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on right now in the U.S. I just watched a very interesting. By the way, I just blurred my background because it was distracting for years. Now we're both blurred, so it looks pretty good. But so we're standardized there. No, I saw in Harvard University queers for Palestine. I'm like, okay, dudes, would you like a one-way ticket? I'll be happy to give you a lift to the Gaza Strip. We'll see how it goes for you there. Not exactly a very forgiving bunch of folks when it comes to homosexuality, but hey, you know, I suppose ignorance is the bliss for a lot of folks. But yeah, a lot of crazy demonstrations going on around the world, in France, in UK, in the United States, in South Africa. It is a crazy world. It is, and it's, you know, so I think there's two things in play here, and please jump in on this one. But I think one of them is I think we've seen a really serious decline in the morality of Homo sapiens in the past 30 years. In my view, I've seen a very serious decline in the value of life, the dignity and respect of life, and just the behavior of people. And it cuts across all faiths. I mean, and people, especially not of faith, but not exclusively. There's plenty of people not of faith who are still moral people, but I see this amongst Christians, amongst Jews, amongst Muslims, this disdain, disregard for life. I mean, it's the only thing, in my view, that explains the explosion of violent crime, the misuse of human beings, the conflicts are taking place. I mean, do you think I'm off base on this?
No, you're not off base. It's actually slightly more than even that. What we're also seeing right now is that people are validating for the first time in a very long time. Certainly for me, I'd have to maybe go back to World War II. But for the first time in a long time, people are actually openly validating terrorist groups. and actual terrorist groups, not liberation movements that are classified as terrorists by oppressive regimes. Actual terrorist groups that terrorize people. So over and above everything you said, people are actually validating this. Who would have ever thought that we'd have people marching in civil society, well, not civil society, but let's say civilized society, validating the actions of a terrorism group? Usually when terrorist attacks happen, people tend to stand in unison against the disregard for human life. Not in this case. You got people validating it, because what we are now seeing is that when you have disdain for one group of people, seemingly humankind is very willing to take that disdain and actually use it to fuel even more anger, even more hatred, even more, let's say, I'm looking for the right word here, but the kind of response that doesn't exactly bring out the best of us, and doesn't matter what side you're on, what religion you're on, what ideology you subscribe to. But when you have so much disdain for one group of people that you're willing to actually deny them human rights, that says a lot about you than the so-called boogeyman you claim to be standing up against.
Well, I can't disagree with you on that one at all. The thing here is what's really sad about this, Koketso, is that this demonization of other human beings. And as I mentioned a short while ago in a conversation with Ronaldo Jos on his program, if you take the Jews in Israel and if you take their Palestinian neighbors and check their DNA, you're going to find out they're kissing cousins by and large. These are pretty much the same people. And Muslims, Jews, and Christians all worship the same deity. And it makes it even more repulsive how people demean life. I mean, the bloodlust that must be in someone to make them demonic enough to behead babies and to shoot people who are defenseless and to chase them down like livestock. Look, I mean, unfortunately, Koketso, I've seen this many times in combat. Not from soldiers, but from, paramilitaries and other groups. And I've seen the consequences of it in Bosnia and elsewhere. It is just horrific. This is what disturbs me the most. And, for 36 years in uniform, people are like, you're in the army, you kill people. I'm like, no, that's not my job. My job is to deter people from killing people, present a credible deterrence, and to train people to be professional. So if it comes to force of arms, it's conducted in the most sane and legitimate fashion possible. Now, for me, it's heartbreaking. I mean, we saw this in Cabo Delgado where these ghouls chopped apart bodies and put them in wheelie bins, and they glorified this, and the media didn't cover much of it because it was pretty gruesome. We saw it with ISIS, lighting a Jordanian pilot on fire in a cage. The inhumanity. What does it take? I mean, you don't have to answer this question. It's a rhetorical question. What does it take to be so far gone that you so disvalue life? I mean, when you think about the miracle of life, two people engage. And the chances of procreating each time two people engage are actually quite low in humans. It's not very high. I mean, it's not like every time you have sex you're gonna fall pregnant. It doesn't happen. It has to happen a lot. It just shows how often human beings get together. But eventually, this is the truth. So that egg forms, life is created. The mother carries that child for 9 months. Normally, I mean, some are premature, but they carry it for 9 months and gestates in that mother. The child is born. It's a miracle of life. Then that child is nurtured and fed and changed and raised and taught and learns to communicate, learns right from wrong, hopefully, and is raised, and sometimes in the faith, sometimes not, and is brought up with morals, customs, traditions, and mores and values of a society. And all the energy that goes into raising that child into an adult, they go into the world, and then someone takes their life so callously. It's and what really gets me, Koketso, is that the whataboutism, the nonsense analogies, like, for instance, the rave goers at this peace rave was taking place. This woman says, well, she wasn't stripped, I mean, she's half naked to begin with, as if shaming her. And that doesn't excuse what happened there.
That's that validation again now. Yeah. To say, but she wasn't fully dressed in the first place. Right. So again, like,
I'm not fully dressed in the shower. It doesn't justify you breaking in my home and shooting me in the shower. Come on. It's stupid.
Yeah. So how did we get here? Because I'm pretty sure 20 years ago, this sort of thing would have been immediately condemned by the world over. But what we have right now is the level of whataboutism, so you asked a couple what I assumed wouldn't be controversial things. And, I had people halfway across the world saying, oh yeah, that's rich coming from you, a South African who should know better than anyone about what apartheid-like policies do to people. And I'm thinking, okay, so even when people are oppressed with apartheid-like policies, that doesn't mean you need to stoop down to the lowest levels of barbarism as possible. You're still human at the end of the day. So to see people actually discount all of that, it's quite surprising for me. Well, I'd say it's disappointing, firstly, but it is really a surprise because maybe it's the advent of social media nowadays, but the way people say these things so openly as well. You expect these things to be said behind closed doors in secret clubs, much like how you'll get your far right wing guys who literally want to, when every man wants to have an arsenal or an armory inside of their backyard, they don't openly say this stuff. You say it between your friends out in secret, and only a handful of people know that you've got enough to outfit a small platoon. But people say these things openly. Because the repercussion, or there's a societal acceptance of this kind of rhetoric nowadays. And you didn't find that in the past, on either side. Take how George W. Bush responded to 9/11, for instance. Even then, when emotions are very high, you still wouldn't get a sane person saying, I don't care what it takes. Burn down the entire country of Afghanistan or Pakistan or wherever you think Osama bin Laden and his Taliban are hiding. People wouldn't come out and say that, right, just blow the whole thing to bits. Why? Because there's regular civilians there. People have nothing to do with the conflict. This is how people were many years ago, or let me say 2 decades ago. Now you've got people from one side saying, just bomb the hell out of the other side so we can end this thing once and for all. And then you've got a chorus of people clapping it and seemingly intelligent people coming up with all sorts of academic reasoning to validate and justify why this should be the way forward, finding every excuse in the book that says, right, this is actually morally the high ground we need to take. This stuff never used to happen. And I don't know if it's maybe with the current conflict now, or if it's something that we see across the board. It's just maybe I'm ignorant. I don't know. So maybe you can let me know. Is this normal, or am I just being privy to something that is actually not that uncommon to begin with?
Sadly, Koketso, it's not that uncommon. That's the really tragic part about this, unfortunately. I mean, I served in a period when there were multiple conflicts around the world, and I was sadly involved in several of those and helped prevent some others, thank goodness. But this is truly horrific stuff. And actually, in the case of Israel, I can go back to when it all turned against Israel. It was 1982 in Lebanon, but we'll get back to it in a second. But the thing here is that I would add to my point that morality is broken, 2 other things that facilitate and fuel this. Number one, social media and the keyboard warrior complex allows people to act like the most reprehensible and vile creatures they possibly can with no consequences. That's the first thing. And then the media. That's the truth of the matter here. If you turn the clock back to 1981, before Israel was attacked from Lebanon by Hezbollah, and then Israel invaded Lebanon in 1982. Up until from 1948 to 1982, the left wing, the mainstream media, all the politicians on both sides of the aisle in all the Western capitals were staunchly backing Israel in everything. And in 67, when Israel did a preemptive attack, they supported Israel because it was clear that they were about to be attacked and they were just doing a preemptory. But the Israelis were attacked in 48. They were attacked in 56. They were attacked in 73. And in 67, they launched it. They were always supported. But in 1982, Israel went from being the underdog, the side that was always suffering an onslaught, to the aggressor in the eyes of leftists in particular and the media. And ever since 82, the media has been against Israel and has run a constant narrative and run these stories that portray Palestinians as poor, downtrodden, oppressed. There's some degree of truth to that for many Palestinians, but that is far from the whole story. And that's when the worm turned against Israel. And Israel is just the latest incarnation of this stupidity. We saw it in Bosnia. We saw it in the 70s in Cambodia with Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge, killing a fifth of the population, murdering them in the killing fields. It just goes on and on and on. And it's truly sad, the evil that human beings are capable of. It's one reason why I served in uniform, to try to deter it, because a strong deterrent prevents idiots like this from behaving that fashion.
Yeah, then there's that other element as well, which I've also picked up, at least from what I'm seeing online. You've got people who actually can't differentiate between Hamas and the state of Palestine.
Exactly, the Palestinian Authority. That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. Is it called the Palestinian Authority? Just so I'm clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they can't actually differentiate between the two. So Hamas, a terrorist organization, initiates an attack on Israel. And in response to what Hamas did, people are raising Palestinian flags.
Right. The two aren't the same.
Yeah, they're not the same.
No.
And so when
Hezbollah is not Lebanon.
Yes. Yeah, precisely. So when Israel retaliates to then, let me say, counter-strike to where Hamas is known to be holed up, that then is interpreted as a strike on, not Hamas, on Palestine. So again, like, how did we get here? It's very similar to, and you would have seen this many times over, how you have like a lone shooter who decides to go buck wild and shoot up people, be it in a school or at a crowd gathering, whatever. If it happens let's say if it happens in Dallas, Texas, right? Do you then say that in Dallas, do we then say that the feds should go after Dallas?
No.
Or do you say they should go after the lone shooter, for instance?
Yep.
So that's the common logic, right? But when it comes to certain conflicts, people don't apply that logic. And this is after they actually validate what Hamas is doing.
Yeah, so that's even more reprehensible. Anyone that can justify what Hamas did is ridiculous. Now, you made a differentiation here, which is important, which no one's making that distinction in any of the legacy media. And it's very disappointing. And they're showing Israeli attacks into residential areas, and they're playing the card that they're killing civilians. Undoubtedly, civilians are dying there, unfortunately, but they're not simply shooting targets at random and running around, which is what they're implying with their video and with their commentary. They're actually attacking, as you indicated, places where Hamas is known to operate out of, and they're legitimate military targets. I mean, if forces use a mosque or a church or synagogue to fire at people, it becomes a legitimate target. Now, under the rules of war, it's not, but it becomes one because of that. If you use a hospital to conduct offensive action, that's a legitimate target, and that's unfortunate. But that's when they violate the rules of the land warfare, and there are laws of land warfare. There are agreed standards to this. But obviously, Hamas has no interest in that. And I think it's really important you make the distinction I've been making all along about the Palestinians and about Hamas. Two different things. Yes, the Hamas is made up of Palestinians, but it's not all the Palestinians. There are 2 million people living in the Palestinian Authority. Now, I'm gonna take issue with Israel on one issue here, and I've talked about this with Ronaldo, and I've done it in my videos, and I think you'll probably agree. The Israeli spokesman, Hecht is his name, I think, for the Israeli Defense Force. And by the way, full disclosure, I've worked with the Israeli Defense Force, the IDF. I was deployed to Israel a few decades ago for a number of months, and I've worked with them. But the IDF spokesperson, Hecht, said that we urge all Palestinians to leave the Gaza Strip. Well, that's all fine and dandy, except that the Gaza Strip is surrounded on 3 sides by Israel, and the borders are closed, and they're not letting anybody flee. The only place they can possibly get out would be Egypt into the Sinai, and their border crossing is Rafah. The problem with that is that while the IDF is telling people to get out, they bombed the Rafah boarding post yesterday. The border post there, they bombed it and attacked it with aircraft. And the Egyptians are not letting people through. Now, as I told Ronaldo, I said, if I'm Palestinians, I'm going for Rafah. I'm getting my family out of there, and I'm going for Rafah. And when I get there and the Egyptians say you can't come across, that's all fine and dandy. But when 20 or 30 or 40,000 people back up behind me, we'll just push through the gates and we'll be in the Sinai. Then you can deal with this. But the Egyptians apparently are in negotiations with the American State Department to open that border to let people flood into the Sinai. But I have real issue with the Israeli military telling people to get out of Gaza when they've blocked all the exits. That's just bogus in my view.
Yeah, and I think you're right on that aspect. So I don't know, is this another case where it was more important to show that you're quickly responding, that is if you're IDF, than to actually put your heads together and come up with a plan that is reasonable for all those unwilling victims? Yeah, to me, that's exactly what it looks like,
Well, as far as unwilling and prepared, I think, to be honest, that if you look at this from an operational standpoint, with the exception of that stupid comment from Hesh and that stupid idea of not letting people out, which gives people the impression they simply want to kill people. Honestly, a person could infer that from that. But aside from that, I think it's been very operationally measured and controlled. Israel didn't just roll across the border with troops. They're massing their troops. They've activated 300,000 reserves. They didn't just go in. Now, the airstrikes, that's something they can do at any moment. At any moment, they have people sitting on airfields 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They can be in the air within a minute and a half, 2 minutes. No kidding. That's a true story, or less, and defending Israel or attacking their neighbors. So those strikes, I think, were intentional. They've reportedly killed a number of senior Hamas officials. I don't know if that's been confirmed or not. But the ground forces have not crossed over. And this is where the problem is. Once the ground forces cross over, and now there's two reasons for that. Number one, I think they're showing restraint as they get forces in place and prepare for their operation. Number two, they're still rounding up Hamas, who are in. Now, they're claiming they've got them all out, I think, today after 5 days. But they were still running around murdering people in their homes up until yesterday. And so they were running loose in southern Israel. So I think that's another reason why you don't want to go in and have your rear unprotected while you don't. So those two things come into play. But unless they let people flee the country, I got a serious problem here morality-wise with what's going on.
Yeah, but then, of course, that raises the issue of not everyone fleeing is an innocent civilian, right?
Of course, that's true. That's why you have human intelligence operatives. That's why you put your human intelligence operatives amongst the refugees, and then you identify those who are known to be the people you're looking for, and then you go and Mossad deals with them. And that's
okay. So
yeah.
So I've got a question, right? Yeah. For all the talk of unity with Palestine and standing with Palestine, etc., why is it then that none of their neighbors want anything to do with Palestine? They're not exactly quickly coming to the aid of Palestine. Now, the conventional wisdom says, yeah, because the actions are not done by Palestine, they're done by Hamas. And which sovereign state is going to openly, quote unquote, openly support a terrorist organization, of course. But granted, why don't we see, ships coming in from Saudi, from Jordan, from Oman, Kuwait, Egypt even? Why don't we see the kind of aid that would, see civilians being pulled out or anything like that? We're not finding anything like that. We're not seeing a concentrated effort by at least Palestine's religious neighbors to, at the very least, go and safely get out their brothers and sisters there. So why aren't we seeing that?
Well, you raise a very good question, and I think it's a very complicated and multifaceted answer. And I can give you a few reasons why, in my view, as someone that's lived in the region, worked in the region, and knows the region, why this is the case. And some people aren't going to like this. They're not going to have a say, but this is just the truth. Number one, most people don't want the Palestinians. They are a nuisance from the perspective of Cairo, from Amman, from Damascus. Damascus got its own problems. Syria doesn't need any Palestinians flooding in there. Jordan doesn't want any more Palestinians. There are more Palestinians in Jordan than there are Jordanians, and have been since 1967. And they reproduce at a higher rate than Jordanians who live there. So the Jordanians are outnumbered by Palestinians. That's one reason why they were happy to see the Palestinians go be third country nationals in Kuwait and be workers there, leave and go to the United States or Canada or the US or UK, and also to see them go elsewhere. So the Palestinians, for many people, in the region, Arab leaders are simply a nuisance. Now, I don't mean to diminish the human value of Palestinians, and I'm not doing that. I'm just telling you strategically what role they play, particularly for Jordan. So Jordan doesn't want to be involved in this at all. In fact, Jordan doesn't want anything in the West Bank argument. For years, they were involved in that West Bank argument. They've stayed quiet on it for a long time now. The Palestinians...
Well, they got their ass handed to them by Israel decades ago,
that's where this all comes from. You know, I mean, people keep talking about occupied territory. Okay, I know that this is difficult for leftists to grasp. You're not a leftist, but you don't have difficult. But I'm saying leftists have a hard time grasping this. It may be unpalatable. It may be undesirable. It may be cruel. But conquest is a legitimate form of political discourse. Now, the Israelis were attacked in 48, and they defeated their Arab neighbors miraculously. It was amazing. Almost nothing. They did it. And they captured territory and reclaimed territory that had belonged to the Jews for thousands of years. Then in 56, they were attacked again by Nasser and the other Arabs. They attacked them, and they defeated them again, and they gained more territory. In 67, as I said, the Israelis were on the verge of being attacked by the Egyptians and the Syrians and the Jordanians, and they saw this. They had good intelligence, and they launched a preemptive six-day war and just obliterated. They captured the Golan Heights, they captured the West Bank, they captured Gaza, they captured the entire Sinai, and then they eventually returned the Sinai to the Egyptians and the Suez Canal, which they'd also captured. They kept the Golan Heights because strategically giving it up would have been foolish, because the Syrians just put artillery up there and then bombed their settlements. So that hasn't happened since 67. And they kept the West Bank. That's conquest. The Palestinians who fought with the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Syrians were defeated. Oh, by the way, the Iraqis were there too. They sent a couple divisions into this conflict, even though Iraq isn't geographically next to it. They fought through Syria and through Jordan. They were defeated. Time and time again, they lost the war. And that's a legitimate force. So these aren't occupied territories. They're conquered territories. Get over it. The Jews were conquered by Rome, and they were kicked out of there, by and large, out of the land 1,000 years ago. So people don't like that, Koketso, but that's the reality. I mean, the Khoi and San were displaced when the Nguni-speaking peoples crossed the Zambezi, then the Limpopo, pushing them into the fringes and margins. I don't want to hear the fairy tales from the nonsense. Well, we get along with the Khoi and San. If you did, then why aren't they still in their tens of thousands in the fertile lands of Matabele,
Zimbabwe,
exactly.
Limpopo,
exactly.
Yeah,
they were marginalized and pushed away.
Desert.
It may be true that the Xhosa, by and large, integrated in some respects and got along with them, but they too pushed them to the margins. So, you know, it's just a matter that the Xhosa had not gotten beyond the Great Frisch River by the time Europeans arrived. So, I mean, the problem, Koketso, is we can have a rational conversation, plus we also kind of agree on many things, but so many people can't have this rational conversation because it doesn't fit their narrative. They don't like to hear this. It's the truth. It's the truth. I mean, it's like, you know, if you get off our conference and say there was no slavery, there was slavery. You think all those people came from, I mean, there were slaves. They were brought from Malaysia and Indonesia by the Dutch East India Company, and were brought to Cape Town. That's how Islam was first introduced in South Africa. It came with the Cape Malays. Anyway, so people just don't like and by the way, Afrikaners, between 2 and 9% African DNA amongst those guys. A lot of them don't like to hear that, but that's true. Listen, you know, human beings, and people knock boots, you know, regardless of what people look like. I'm just saying. But people don't want to hear the truth, Koketso. So they just don't want to hear the truth, man.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, you know, I'm privileged now to see a little bit of the continent, certainly more than the average South African. And one of the conversation starters I like doing is, you know, you get to, so I was in Malawi about, just over a month ago.
The warm heart of Africa.
Well, very true that it's warm there.
No. That's their tagline. They're known as the warm heart of Africa. I used to live in Malawi.
Oh, okay. Nice. Yeah, so I spent about a week in Lilongwe. And one of my conversation starters, I start this with anyone, guests in the hotel, often with whoever's shuttling me from the airport as well. So I'm in the car, leaving the airport. We start talking. It's a little bit of a drive, and you discover common words between my language, Setswana, and whatever language I find, particularly if it's another Bantu.
Chichewa. Chichewa is probably a language you heard.
Chichewa, there we go. Yeah, Chichewa. You know, there's common words. Water, eggs, meat. stones, grass, the word would be almost the same, different dialects, it would sound like, a different pronunciation, but to the level where the word is very similar. Now, how do languages get so similar? It means the people actually at some point interacted with one another at some point in the past. Language doesn't develop overnight. And so as people migrate, they take elements of where they came from, and then they also inherit elements of where they're going. In diet, in language, in clothing, attire, all of that, and this is what we find in DNA. So you see this in there. And that really does speak into the reality that there was migration of some sort. And much of this migration was done with conquest. It wasn't done with adults sitting at the table to decide who will live where, nicely over dinner, and then a bottle of wine is opened later and a toast is had. Much of this was done with conquest. I'll give you another example. So my girlfriend's from Bushbuck Ridge. And, I would then hear that her family, actually, judging by surname, their lineage actually goes back to the Botswana somehow. Her uncle told me this. My father actually suspected this as well because he'd heard something once upon a time. So then I went around and went digging, and as you would have it, it actually rings true. Now, how did people in Bushbuck Ridge end up going all the way east from where you would traditionally find Botswana? Well, it turns out that there was a spat somewhere along the line. As you can imagine, family infighting. Someone takes their wife and some of their cousins, and they start moving along, start fighting with some people along the way, and then they ultimately decide to settle in one place. When they settle there, they find another group of people who had also just been pushed out by another group of people who were actually running away from Shaka and ended up settling in what we now know as Eswatini. That then creates a fight between about 3-4 different native groups. Eventually, things calm down after a while, but you have in one area 3-4 different native groups that have a history from west, where the Botswana are, north, where the Bapedi are, east, where the Swatis are, and then you can mix in a little bit of the Tsonga people as well, who are actually probably the ones who were there the longest. People don't know this, but I bring this up because what we then find later on is that, given the way the demarcation works in South Africa, Bushbuck Ridge is a very interesting town. Once upon a time, it was part of the Limpopo province. And then people got angry that they didn't want to. So Limpopo is primarily associated with Pedis, the Bapedi, and the Vavenda. The Tsongas aren't really numerous, but they're there in numbers. So people in Bushbuck Ridge, in time, and this is now going back, I think, 20 years or so, then decide that they do not want to be part of a province where the provincial capital is in Polokwane, what used to be Petersburg, which is right in the heart of the Bapedi's territory. So people in Bushbuck Ridge, on the fringe of the province, don't want to report to the Bapedi because of fights that were held generations ago, where people in Bushbuck Ridge were fighting with the present day, or what we now call the Emaswati. And the Bapedi never showed up to help them in the fight. And this is now going back 7, 8, 9 generations. And because of that bitterness still carries on literally a few lifetimes later on. So again, the result of migration and conquest even goes beyond your own lifetime. So when I hear people like Malema then coming out and saying that, no, we are actually one people and we were all united until the white man came on ships to divide us, etc., etc. No. In the absence of the so-called evil white man, people didn't even want to be associated in the same province as their arch enemy from many lifetimes ago. over a battle where there were no white people involved in there. It was purely based between tribe versus tribe, because someone was here and then someone else came from the north and then someone else came from the east and someone else came from the west, and now we're all fighting and there can only be one winner, and now the bitterness carries on for hundreds of years. This is the reality, and this is the history that most South Africans never actually come across. What they do come across, however, is a charismatic politician who's going to feed them nonsense, and they believe it.
Yeah, no, you're right, 100% there, Koketso, and I tell this story many times, a similar story like that. I'm waiting for it to come up, but Daz Neal just gave a 50-pound super chat. Oh my goodness, that's like the old days on this channel, back before censorship. Says Jacob Chansley's Angels. You will see soon. Love you. Okay, cool. Thanks for that. That's awesome, Daz. Let me address what Koketso was just talking about. You know, when I started my original channel, I mean, I had it for 16 years. It just had a couple waterfall videos from Iceland because I was an intelligence officer. I couldn't use social media. But when I started using it for bringing the news, analysis, and interviewing people, I get a lot of Afrikaners who flock to me very quickly, and some of them, they also aren't particularly well informed, like many South Africans, particularly those who are younger, because South Africa's history has been mal-taught or not taught at all for the last 30 years. Yeah. And it was also kind of skewed before that. But the bottom line is, so I would talk to them, and they're like, there's only so many of us. There's the super chat. It finally came up. Thank you for that, Daz. Wow, 50 pounds, man. That's awesome. Very kind of you. That'll help a little bit pay for some of my bill for this internet. But so it's expensive, Koketso. My internet's expensive.
It is.
Yeah. Says Chris talks sense worth millions. Well, thank you so much for that, Daz. I really do appreciate that. Ke alabo. Koketso will understand what that means. It means thank you. But bye donkey. So back to what I was trying to say here. So I would tell them, you know, they feel isolated, they feel surrounded, they have no allies. I'm like, stop. Okay, I'm generalizing, and you can't take generalizations, but there's truth to it. Okay, so for instance, you need to know your own history. When the Trek Boers moved up into what became the Free State, the Orange Free State, and then the Transvaal into the Highveld. When they did that, they also went down, of course, over the Drakensberg. I never understood why they went over the hard part, just go a little further north and go around it, but that's just me. But anyway, they went over the Drakensberg, they descended down, they went into the Zulu. But those who were in the Highveld were running into problems because they would come up there. They found a lot of open space because of the Mfakane, where tribes were scattered and moving apart. And of course, the Tswana and the Sotho are cousins. They're not that distantly related. I mean, they're pretty closely related, but they were separated by these groups. There's a kind of a gap in there. And the Trek, I'm generalizing, but there's truth is. Yeah. They move up into this gap, okay? And they move in small groups. Well, they find themselves being attacked by the Ndebele. Who are the Ndebele? They're an offshoot who didn't want to be Zulu. Mzilikazi took them, moved up into the Highveld, and since they were stronger and better organized, they preyed upon the Tswana and around the Griquas who were up there, the mixed race folks, the original Trek Boers. They also preyed upon the Sotho peoples, and they would attack them, take their cattle, take their wives, burn their settlements, stuff like that. Well, they did the same thing when the Trek Boers showed up. And the Trek Boers like, whoa, wait a second. And what people don't know about their history is that the Trek Boers, many of them allied with the Baralong, who are Tswana speakers, along with the Griquas, along with many of the Sotho people. They formed together. They fought side by side to chase Mzilikazi and the Ndebele out of what is today South Africa, and they fled into what became Matabeleland in Zimbabwe, where they got in conflict with the Shona. People don't know that history. So when people say that black and whites have always been at odds, that may be true, but black and whites have always been allies in South Africa for much of its history. They've worked together, and people need to learn their history and overcome these prejudices and this bigotry, because it's sad. And Koketso, I think, your point talking about there's always been conflict, there's always been dispute. It didn't take white fellows, guys with insufficient pigmentation, to show up to get people fighting each other. It's always been going on. Well, look, it's unfair, man. You got more than your share. I got cheated. Look at this. I didn't get a good tan.
Yeah, but equally said, you probably can handle the snow much better than I can.
That's true.
Yeah.
So there's an advantage there, but that's because my people were crazy. They went so far north, there wasn't enough sunlight. We had to adapt to the snow.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, I mean, yeah, so look, we can go on and on about, sure, a lot of these conflict discussions, but it is what it is. My own people, the Botswana, are suspect number one. We almost eradicated the San.
Yeah.
actually.
And it even continues today. The government of Botswana forcing the San onto the Central Kalahari Game Reserve and removing them from it, not forcing them, taking them from it, putting them in settlements leading to teen pregnancies, drug use, alcohol from a nomadic people. Leave them alone. Let them be who they are. That's their choice.
Yeah, and the reality is, if you go further north into Africa, right, you've got a lot of all these various tribes that would live in the desert, and part of the reason they were there is because, well, they just adapted to life in the desert because they couldn't go any further south, because trekking that piece of land is actually very difficult, And this is why the Nile, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's still the only major river that actually flows from south
to north, yes.
To north.
By and large, that's true, yes. Yeah, major river.
Yes. Yeah, and because we know that gravity is a thing, what goes up must come down. So going up into the desert, into the other part of Africa, was actually very difficult.
Oh, yeah.
And this is why your David Livingstone and the likes really wanted to take upon this adventure, because they had the technology to do that, whereas really much of the desert people didn't have that technology. So that's what happened in the north. What I'm trying to bring up here is that no one lives in a desert by choice.
No, it's hot, it's dry, there isn't enough game, things don't grow, it sucks.
Yeah, it sucks living in the desert. So, if you're forced to adapt, then you're forced to adapt. But it's really not first choice to live in the desert. And that's what happened in the north. In the southern part of sub-Saharan Africa, at the very least, those we find in the desert, typically the San people, they're in there because they were pushed out by stronger people.
Yep.
That's a fact.
Yeah, it's undeniable. No, Koketso, I mean, along that line, you talked about the similarities in languages, and that's an important distinction because, I get attacked by these race hustlers all the time on Twitter and elsewhere, and like, oh, you just buy whatever the Boers tell you. No, I'm a historian, a political scientist, and a polyglot. I buy what linguistics, archaeology, history, all of these things prove to me what actually happened. We know this as a matter of fact. And the divergence of language, and we see it now with English. Look at Indian English on the subcontinent. Look at South Africa. Nobody says robot in the world except South Africans. It's a damn traffic light. Get with the program, South Africa. No, but I mean...
I say it's a traffic light.
Okay, but even in England, but that's because you got the Tswana influence. They say traffic light too. They don't say robot. Yeah. But look at the differences, the regional differences in English, even in a modern connected world, how English is diverging in so many different ways. What's going on? Oh, my headphones just died there. So English is diverging in so many different ways. It must be the battery I've had on for all the rugby this weekend. It's diverging in so many different ways. German, Dutch, French, English all come from the same Indo-European origins. But then there was a split later on because of the Romans, and French went from a Germanic language to a Romance language. That split occurred long before the Nguni-speaking people split, and that's why the words in Setswana are so close to Chichewa, because the linguistic split is so much closer. And that's yet more evidence. You give it another 1,000 years, if we didn't have the connected world we had today, if we were still living nomadically and herders and farmers, and we didn't have telecommunications and WhatsApp and all, you would see a huge divergence between what you speak in Setswana and what they speak in Chichewa. But you see the closeness because it's a recent development, and people are just willfully ignorant of this. It's frustrating.
Yeah, I think you're right to call it willful ignorance, actually, because, people are very eager to go down many rabbit holes when trying to validate or justify a lot of their thinking. But when it comes to the basics, and I say history is the basics because this is your own people now, you don't have to pick a political side to learn the history. For me, learning history, and again, I'm one of the few that would do history as a high school subject. In South African high school, at least, only the black sheep would pick up history as a subject. Around 10th grade or so, when you actually now reduce the number of your subjects, you decide to quote unquote specialize in a few. You want to be an accountant, you're going to pick up accounting. You want to go do civil engineering, you're going to go pick up engineering as a subject, etc. So I actually did history in high school with no ambition to actually pick up a social science degree. I picked it up because I really enjoy it, and till this day, I really enjoy history. Till this day, I can't even read fictional literature. I prefer to read nonfiction, preferably something that's going to let me learn about something else that happened in the past. And we've already spoken about how I also tie this in with geography. But I digress. So for me, learning things is actually it's not academic for me. So I live in the east of Johannesburg, and where I live, I've made it a point since I was in high school to know the history of the place where I live. I know why the streets are named, why they're named. I know why the public library in my town is called the Ricardo Mulder Library. I know why the oldest primary school is called the M.W. de Wet Primary School. These were actual people who contributed significantly to the foundation of the town. It's not just some Afrikaans guy who has a school named after him, but people don't know this. And I've had an argument with someone, this was on Twitter, formerly known, well, X, formerly known as Twitter. I see that's what many of the media outlets are saying nowadays.
Exactly.
But, I basically live on top of one big semi-documented graveyard. Yeah, there's a lot of people buried underneath
I saw that movie Poltergeist. I don't want to know the rest.
Yeah, there were many unmarked graves in and around the area where I live right now. They were unmarked because, for those that don't know, there was nothing here in Johannesburg. I don't care who says what. Me and many others have tried, we've looked it up, and smarter people than I have done the necessary work. There was basically nothing in Johannesburg until gold was discovered. And suddenly mines are quickly established.
Overnight, 30,000 people within 3 weeks. Yep.
Yeah. And that's more than the Californian gold rush as well. So, people kind of knew that, some missed out on the Californian gold rush a couple hundred years prior. So next time there's a gold rush, you better get yourself there quickly.
Let me interrupt you for a second. Sorry, I just got another amazing super chat from my moderator. Hendo just gave 20 pounds. That's like 70 quid on this stream. Koketso, you can come on every day, brother.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Hendo's been itching to give that. So
yeah, it's been a while since he did a super chat. So
Yeah, so there was nothing in Johannesburg. Gold gets discovered, mines quickly get established, and then towns quickly get established in and around the mines. So to go back to the 30,000 immigrants you just mentioned, these people came from everywhere.
And by the way, they weren't just white; they were also black too.
Yeah, including arguably most of them were black.
Yeah, exactly. But that's lost. That's the history is ignored. Most of the people, not most, but many of the people migrated to the Witwatersrand for the gold were actually black, and a lot of them were their own prospectors digging. Same thing in Kimberley. The Big Dig. Yeah. That's the largest hand dug hole on the planet by humans, and much of that was done by black miners who were looking for diamonds on their own. Yeah.
Precisely. So that was now economic migration. Man leaves his family behind. He wants to go try out his luck and hopefully make something of himself, effectively create generational wealth. Now, in the rush of all of this, right, the technology to safely mine isn't what we have today.
Right.
So a lot of people are coming in from all over, speaking all sorts of languages, and accidents happen as they are prospecting, as they are risking their lives. So a lot of people are also dropping dead due to injury,
disease,
on the job,
poor sanitation,
all of that. So as this happens, in the rush, people are also quickly buried. Mm-hmm. And when people are quickly buried, many times or more often than not, it's an unmarked grave.
It's not recorded. It's not, exactly.
Yeah. And if they had a little bit of money and they have friends who really cared enough about them, maybe they might put up a stone that will stand the test of time. This is why I live on effectively a large gravesite. Me and the area around me. Mm-hmm. And then I have a debate with someone on social media who then comes out and says, yes, but we need to have a conversation about how the land in Edenville needs to be returned
Return to
original
who?
inhabitants.
To who?
You know, there were people from the Tsonga tribe and then the Ndebele tribe. That was the original land, and they were displaced by the Boers when they came in and effected the early apartheid laws, etc. If you don't believe me, go and look at those graves right there. You'll see the graves there that show that our people, that's the original land of our people. And then I see this, I'm like, my guy, you're talking nonsense. Mm-hmm. I live to the closest one from where I am right now is about 550 meters away. So these graves that he's talking about is not something I've heard about. It's something I've known about since 1998 when I moved here. You know, so I know exactly where they are. I know they're there, you know, and arguably I live on top of some of them. And I've actually done the history. And I'm trying to tell this guy that those are not graves of the original land inhabitants. Those are graves of people who rushed to this area.
Who flocked to the area for the gold rush.
Yep. For gold.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's, look, but cognitive dissonance, willful ignorance is the order of the day all over the world. It's so frustrating. Let me interrupt for a second here. Two things I want to get to because Daz gave such an incredible super chat. He's got another comment here. I want to make sure I get it. And then I want to answer a question that was asked by Chris Holmes, who's in Australia. He said ads during a live stream. Chris, I was given some very good advice by Byron Shepard from Morning Shot when I was in Port Elizabeth in August. He said, Chris, one of the reasons why your views are down is because YouTube is only promoting videos where they're making money. He said, you should monetize all your videos. I'm like, I have a rule against that. I don't monetize certain things. He goes, you should do it. I did it, and I noticed a demonstrative and measurable spike in the number of views and often the number of times. It's not like it was before, but in order for us to reach a broad audience, I have to do with it. And here's the thing. If I don't do it, YouTube is going to do it anyway. They are very soon in the next few months, they're going to stick ads in your videos, whether you like them or not. It's going to drive people away, but some people stay. So I figured, why not try to take advantage of it now to get some promotion, to gain some more subscribers, to get more exposure, and make a little bit of coin. I actually made more money in advertising last month because Nas both was on my program. We had a lot of ads viewed. More money on my channel, which wasn't much, by the way, like $140 US. From ads than I did from membership, which hasn't happened since 2021. Anyway, so that's that. The thing from Daz, Neil said, I'm colorblind. He said, I am colorblind or normal. I think he was asking a question there. My mom and dad were murdered by the ANC. Now back in Manchester, 33 years. I support all you show and all your guests. Some I may hate, but learning every day. Thank you, Nako. Listen, Daz, I'm sorry to hear that your parents were murdered by the ANC. I don't know what the circumstances were. I'm going to guess perhaps it was the People's Revolution, the People's War in KZN or something like that. Maybe, hopefully not necklacing or whatever. And I don't know if you're Zulu or if you're an Afrikaner or what you are. But thank you so much for the super chat. And I'm sorry to hear about the fate of your parents. That's horrific. That's another part of South Africa's history that the ANC has successfully whitewashed, no pun intended, and covered up their complicity, their role in murdering over 20,000 members of Inkatha back in the 1990s through their pogroms that were taking place. But anyway, I digress. Sorry, Koketso, I just want to address those real quick.
Yeah.
So that's,
It's always good addressing things while you still remember to address them.
Exactly. Well, especially when people give us nice super chats like that, you really got to do that. But no, it's really sad, Koketso, that you have to explain that and then you get attacked for it. It's so I don't know if you know this, but if you've heard this, but I'll let you know. So I did a preview show of the World Cup with Nas Botha because he was available. Supersport wasn't using him for the World Cup, and he's legendary, and I know Nas. We get along. So he said, yeah, I'll do it with you, Chris. So we did it on the Monday before I flew on Tuesday, and it was popular. We had a lot of views on it. And at the end, I didn't mean to put him on the spot. And I said, Nas, this is a really enjoyable conversation. I'll be in France. If you don't mind, if you're interested, I can call you up and we could chat occasionally and do a broadcast. Call me anytime. So we start doing all these broadcasts. Well, somebody got genitalia envy rather than being crude there. And yeah, so you know where I'm going with that. Some clown in Amsterdam who hates Steve Hofmeyer, for some reason decided he hated me. And I didn't even talk about this guy. I didn't really know much about him. I'd only come across him once before. He took a montage, stole my videos. He must have spent a lot of time doing this and put it together and edited my videos to make it appear that I said things or took them out of context. And then he called Supersport incessantly to complain. And he put on his Facebook page that I'm a white supremacist, that I'm a Rona denier, that I'm a fat shamer, and so on. And next thing I know, Nas is no longer available. We can't do it because his contract conflicts. So it's just amazing, the cognitive dissonance and the dishonesty. And so that's just a minor thing. Imagine what people are doing to people being killed in Gaza and in Israel right now. That, you know, it's just saying bad things about them, just to demonize them. It's just ridiculous. I mean, look, you've met me, you've known me. I mean, would you even remotely believe any of those things are remotely true? That's just ludicrous.
Yeah, absolutely not. And so, yeah, I met up with some friends earlier today. I can't really mention who because you know, we have enemies now.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it's like people I interact with online quite frequently. Yeah, we met up earlier today, and we're actually just talking about how, you know, when we meet people, like when you actually meet people, especially in person, you know, never mind the keyboard warrior nurse, whatever, you actually see the person for who they are. You know, you see the actual person. Mm-hmm. And you have context or an understanding of that person, unlike a stranger who comes across them online and would even go as far as putting together a montage to paint this narrative about who the person really is. You know, it's funny, but actually it's not funny.
It's sad. It's a sad statement of the human condition that people behave in that fashion.
Yeah, and I'm always telling people that, you know, when the arguments get a little bit heated, sometimes I just close it off by saying, listen, you need to meet more people, especially when it comes to things around race, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. You know, every time or many times when I speak, eventually some guy's going to come through and say that, yeah, I think white people are my friends, but one day they're going to betray me, either in my personal life or in my professional life, and then I'll understand the real struggle of the black man in South Africa. I'm like, okay, so you're painting white people with this brush, which is actually not a true brush in any case. So many times my response is, you simply need to meet more people. And when I say meet more people, diversify a bit into people from another race, people of multiple age groups, people in different professions.
Different faiths
as well. You know, you simply need to meet more people. And that's what it comes down to, you know, but people don't meet more people.
No, but Koketso, the problem with that is it's a very human response. And what I mean by that is that it's normal. And that's why I try to tell people, and you have to, not you, the individual has to understand that it is human nature to associate with the like. The like may look like you because of skin pigmentation. They may live like you. They may speak like you. They may worship like you. But we do this. We form tribes unconsciously and consciously, and it is perfectly natural for people to associate with the like. That doesn't make them bigots. If white people who are Afrikaners want their offspring to look like them, and they only want to bear children with white people who look like them, that isn't necessarily racist or bigoted. That just means they are associating with the like. If Tswana don't want to associate with Xhosa because, and I know someone who's Tswana and Xhosa, a mix. If they only want to be Tswana and they only marry Tswana, that's their prerogative. That doesn't make them. Now, if they say evil things or if they take action against someone or discriminate against someone based on that basis, then that does make them a bigot or racist. But associating with I mean, Catholics don't habitually marry Jews. They have different faiths, right? It's just different. That isn't bad. Muslims, well, in Southern Africa, it's different. I know a lot of Muslims marry Christians, and so it's confusing. But generally speaking, say in the West, Muslims don't marry Christians and vice versa. Just because. There's nothing wrong with that. That is human nature to associate with the like, and that is often taken, particularly in the South African context and now the American context, as racism and bigotry. Look at all these white people by themselves. Yeah. Look at Irania, it's racist because only white people are there. Well, do you speak Afrikaans? Are you a Dutch Calvinist? Are you willing to live in the middle of frickin' nowhere? Then go live there.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it's even basic. So I'll use myself as an example. One of the things my grandmother told me, may her soul rest in peace, many years ago, is that, you know, she's a grandma, you know, so she wants to see her grandchildren do well in life, do things the right way, get married, have kids, etc. You know, when you get to very advanced ages, that's really all you want. You already raised your kids are now raising their kids, so you want to see your grandchildren doing well. So they understand that they're from a completely different time, but they still feel obligated to impart some wisdom. So my grandmother one day, she, in the grandmother tone where sometimes we're making jokes, but sometimes I'm being serious. And this time she was being serious. And she tells me that I can't exactly directly translate it, but she was basically saying that when I do pick out a wife, I must just make sure that I don't go pick a wife from too far away.
We know what that
Now,
means.
yeah. Now that hint, nudge, nudge is her saying, look, if you want to find a wife, just go find yourself a nice Tswana girl. And she even doubled down and said, there's many girls here in the village.
Well,
So
but I will add a little to that. Not to interrupt your grandma's sage advice, but the Bangman Wato ladies are known for the size of their bum. I don't know if that interests you. Just saying.
yeah, I have different priorities.
Okay, I'm just saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, I get that, but I mean, that's because the like associate with the like. It's not evil.
Yeah, and so when she says this to me, she's for those who still aren't catching on, my grandmother was basically telling me, yeah, when you need to pick out a wife, just go find a nice Motswana lady. Don't go get a Zulu, Xhosa, Swati, Ndebele, Yeah, she's basically saying don't go find a
don't
wife.
you dare get one of those white gals.
Yeah, that's essentially that's what she
It was
saying.
what was said without having been said.
Yeah. But now, when my grandmother says this, is she a bigot, racist?
No, not in my eyes. No.
No, she's not. The reason she's saying this is because it's simply easier to, African weddings. There's lobola, mahadi, some places call it bride price, etc. There's
Bride
adamant
wealth, yep.
to be, there's adamant to be handled with this, and
Yeah.
her being at her advanced age. And not just through her own experience, but even those of her friends who have their own families, etc. They just know that things can go very south very quickly if you step outside of our small circle of cultural understanding here. So she's just trying to say that, listen, you can do what you like, but, do consider that there's many nice girls here in the village.
Well, I like, I got you.
Smoothly.
I got you. No, but there in the Big Bang Theory, I don't know if you ever watched that show, but the Big Bang Theory, Rajesh is talking to his parents, and they think that he's dating Penny, and his father's like, "Look, Rajesh, I know you're abroad. It's okay to taste the local delicacies, but you should make sure you eat Indian." In other words, sow your wild oats, but stick close to family. I gotta interject here again really quickly because unbelievable. Thank you, Daz Neal once again has given another 50-pound super chat. Oh my goodness! Did you just find our channel, Daz? It's awesome. If you did, please spread the word. If you've got some rich friends, let them know we're here too. But it says Chris, yeah, exactly. Chris, please donate this to Nako Chosen Rum Charity. Okay, the house is empty of alcohol. But with those two super chats, I think I can afford to go back to Starbucks and McDonald's now with their high rates they're charging. But thank you so much for the 50-pound super chat, the second one there. Now, Hendo, I don't think Hendo can afford to keep up with you because you swapped him. It's these days you can pay Lobola in chicken and eggs. Hey, there's no kidding there, man. Oh my goodness, the egg shortage in South African chickens. That's man, I'll tell you what, that's a tough one. Yep.
Look, I'll put on the tinfoil hat and say I'm not buying all of it.
You think it's the kind of market manipulation a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's market manipulation. Those who want to come at me can come at me. All I know is if things really do get bad, I'm getting in the car, I'm driving to Zerost, and I'm going to pick up eggs and chicken from my mother. Who's got enough.
Speaking of which, Koketso, how is your mom? And before you answer the question, for the audience, my first trip back to South Africa after this Rona, whatever, I'm not going to say it, but when I went back, I was looking for accommodation, and Koketso offered, and his mom hosted me. And not only did she host me, my Setswana is a bit rusty, but in the morning, she got a phone call when she was offering me breakfast, and I'm sitting there, and I'm picking up, I'm like, uh-oh. That doesn't sound good. I missed a few words, a few verbs, but I understood that this isn't good. So she got off the phone. She said, Chris, it isn't safe for you to go back into town. There's a service delivery protest. I want you to follow me. So she drove me all the way around town to the backside of the village instead of the coal tar road because it was safe. And then she showed me the way, and I followed this road for 37 kilometers, it seemed like, to come all the way back out 2 kilometers from where I started from. But I mean, she was worried about my safety. Your mom is fantastic. She's a lovely person. It was a pleasure to meet her. She's retired. It's a shame because she's obviously full of piss and vinegar and ready to do a lot more work for society. But I think she's a physician, if I'm not mistaken. But how's your mom doing, Koketso?
Yeah, she's doing great. She's an environmental scientist.
Oh, environmental scientist. But okay, she was working on her PhD.
But she used to be a nurse.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. She was in
she used
medical
to be a
field.
nurse.
Okay. Yeah. No, but please pass her my greetings. A lovely lady.
Yeah, no, she's doing good. I'm gonna see her soon.
Okay.
What's keeping her busy nowadays is she's busy academically. Both my parents are. So I don't know. I'm not at their age, of course, but it seems like at their age they start worrying about their mental health a little bit. And one of the poison they've chosen to stay mentally sharp is to head down and get back into the books. So
no, look, that's awesome. I mean, you mentioned that. Look, when I started doing this stuff, the lockdown had just started. I had my channel, and it was February of 2020, and I was doing consultancy, and I booked a few gigs in West Africa to go there, consultancy gigs, to get American businesses to invest in Africa. That's what I was trying to do. I mean, hey, free trips to Africa. I get a little bit of money. I can see Africa. I stay attuned to the continent. That's a win-win-win for me. And then the Rona just stopped all travel. I couldn't go anywhere. So I started using the channel, and the reason I started doing the videos on my channel is I made like 15, 20-minute, analytical videos. I realized that people don't pay attention for 20 minutes. So I backed it down to 8 to 10 minutes, But I made these videos about Africa. And the reason I did it is I said, my stock in trade is my ability to communicate and my analytical skills. And if I want to maintain those, what better way to do it than research and make these videos while I can't go anywhere? And that's really what I got into. It falls in line with what your parents are doing. Keep your mind active, keep involved, keep learning. To me, and I think to you and your parents, education is a lifelong process. I'll be learning on my deathbed. I'll be probably learning that I'm dying on my deathbed, but I'll be learning all the way to my deathbed. By the way, Daz said, he said, you want more? Yeah, man, if you want to super chat more, if you can afford it. But listen, if you can't afford a super chat, please don't. Most of my viewers are suffering because of Biden inflation, because of the economy, because of the lockdown, because businesses collapse, and we got an awful lot of people that are 2 inches from a SASA grant to survive here that are on my channel. So if you can't afford it, please don't super chat. I'm not starving, although it's not getting easy with Biden inflation, I'll tell you that. But I'm not starving.
Yeah. Bidenomics.
Well, the Biden inflation is an outcome of Bidenomics.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
anyway. To wrap that up, my mom's doing well. They've got the extent to the livestock she has. On the property there. You've seen all those chicken, and there's plenty of eggs to go around there. So.
Yeah, no, I can attest to that, and they're quite tasty eggs. I know because I had some. You'll know more than the viewers exactly what I'm talking about. So if things go south for me, I'm driving home. I can go pick up a few trays of eggs. And come back with some poultry packed nicely, and then my biggest worry will be how to keep it cold on the drive back to Johannesburg. So That's awesome. So it got another one coming here, Koketso. This unbelievable. Daz is giving another 50 pounds. That's 150 pounds on the stream. So when it comes up, I'll ring the bell. But Rob Peterson says, Koketso, it's been so refreshing hearing your views and sharing your experiences and points of view, particularly the fact that you aren't afraid to say what's on your mind. Well, Rob, I would say that we've been doing this Nako for a year now, over a year, and Koketso's been on here many times. Also, I've had him on as a guest on my program. But more importantly, he and Dumo do the Man Patriot pod. You still doing that? I know you guys slowed down for a while. Are you back to doing it?
No, we're not back yet. We might go back into it, but for now, when you think of me and Dumo, think of us as the Man Patriot guys or the former Man Patriot guys.
No, we're not going to say former. We love that program. We guys get back to it. But in the meantime, we'll keep doing Nako. This program is supposed to be a fortnightly program, but my travel, Koketso is traveling a lot internationally now too, and Dumo is almost always reliable, but he was down for the count doing some other things for several months and he wasn't available. But we'll keep bringing it to you as you know, the reason I did this, folks, and I asked these guys to come on here. Number one, listen, I really enjoy having a conversation with Koketso, with Dumo, but then I expanded it when I discovered Nolu. She's a fascinating lady. I'd love to have her on here. And Nzuzo also went on their program, but he's been on here once. Yeah, but he's on the banner. He's like a squatter, man. I'm gonna say the red ants after Nzuzo because he's squatting on the banner. He's only been on the program one time. No, the reason I did it is because I want people to see in South Africa that there are like-minded South Africans who have the same views. There's the super chat of 50 pounds. Oh my goodness. Thank you for that. That's incredible, Daz. That's incredible. You know, I actually, Koketsu, just to let you know, I had a $500 super chat on here one day. That was back in the day. Yeah, someone gave $500. Someone who's in the mining industries, they could afford it, but it was very generous of them. But I mean, those days on YouTube are long gone. So this is kind of exciting to see these 350-pound super chats. And let's not forget Hendo's 20-pound, which means that Hendo will have to be eating box lunches this week because he can't afford to eat proper lunches. So the reason I did this is so that people know that people who look different than you, people of different origin than you, and I'm not assuming that all my audience is white because I have a lot of coloreds in my audience and a number of Indians who come in here and some black South Africans, but people are different, but that doesn't mean they're so different from you. And Dumo, Koketso, Nolu, and maybe Nzuzo, I don't know, he's never here. They have conservative and or libertarian views, which most of us on this program share. So that's why I want to do it. And I think that when we get together, it's an enjoyable experience. Koketso, what do you think?
Yeah, it is an enjoyable experience just to talk even personal stories and the likes. It's very enjoyable. And I don't think I've told people this, but on my last trip, I was actually in Abidjan.
Okay. What were you doing in Abidjan, if you can tell us?
Work.
Okay, wait. Do you work for the CIA? You know, I've been accused by the right of being CIA and the left of being a white supremacist. I'm not sure which I am. If I'm a white supremacist and work for the CIA, then I guess I've got it all.
Yeah. Well, no. If I started making CIA money, maybe it would start showing.
Oh, that's what I said. You know, people like, you work for the CIA. I'm like, I wish. Do you know that with my experience in the intelligence community, I would start as a senior executive service at the first level, and I would be making north of $180,000 a year before benefits and the DC differential, which is about 14% more. So CIA, hey, look, if you guys are hiring, let me know. You know. Yikes. Anyway.
So I was meeting customers out there.
Okay, cool.
I'm one of the people who's
Was this your first trip to Côte d'Ivoire?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Okay, so tell us your experiences and your impressions.
Yeah, interesting country, hot, humid.
Oh yeah, West Africa, it's brutal.
Yeah, you can't really get far with English there either. I'm still learning French, so I've got I'm a bit of a ways off from being able to, let me say, somewhat communicate in French. But French is a very big language in that part of Africa, at least. So, very, very interesting place, really. You start seeing the similarities between Africa, if I can put it like that. The challenges are somewhat always mirrored between East, West, North, South. It doesn't really matter. So the African context, there is always a thread that puts everything together. But, in the industry I work in, we're trying to improve healthcare for the continent. And one of the things I really do take to heart is, step away from the traditional African perspective of always running to the West with open hands, asking them to give you even their breadcrumbs.
More soup, sir.
Yeah, it's a terrible way to do things. And so I'm really trying to do my part, however small it is, in actually doing things ourselves. We understand it. It's our continent, firstly. We understand it. So why do we always need to look abroad to effect any sort of meaningful plan to ultimately look after our own people. It's one thing I don't get, and that's why I get heavily annoyed whenever Cyril Ramaphosa travels halfway across the world and starts barking at the G8 and the G20 about how they haven't fulfilled their promises to donate this and donate that and donate that and donate this. I mean, he did that a few weeks ago, and I'm listening to this thinking, it's official. We pretty much have a president who's playing games. Does he not realize when he's standing in front of the German chancellor, when he's standing in front of the UK prime minister, etc., does he not realize that they actually have their own problems? They have their own problems to deal with. The promise that them or their predecessors made to give you aid money 5, 6, 7 years ago pales in comparison to the problems they're having to deal with right now regarding energy, health. There was a whole pandemic. There was a whole invasion of Ukraine. There's still the blowback from what happened in Afghanistan for particularly NATO and NATO's allies. There's a lot going on. They have their own problems, and you are now traveling to them to sit on a podium and tell them that, oh no, but you guys still haven't given us that money you promised. So what? Really, so what? You are priority number 99 on their to-do list, and they never get to doing number 41, because it's just that busy. So in the same way they're keeping themselves occupied with their problems, you, Mr. President, need to keep yourself busy with your domestic problems back home. But he doesn't do that. So it really frustrates me. And so in my professional life, at the very least, I'm trying to do my part to say, right, we know what needs to be done. Let's actually go ahead and do it. When you fail, or if you fail, it's not really a failure. It's an opportunity to learn some lessons, dust your shoulder off, pull up your socks, and go again. Now you know what not to do. You may not know what to do, but you definitely know what not to do because you've tried it before and it wasn't working, or it didn't work as you'd planned out. That's how I view things, and that's the nature of the work that I do, and at least that's how I'm wired in any case. So yeah, I got told earlier today by friends that I actually maybe need to consider motivational speaking, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. But really, this is the message I want to drive to as many people as possible, to say, find it in yourself to do what you can and don't worry about failing, because if you don't fail, you won't learn anything. So stop
if you don't try, you won't learn anything.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, if you don't try, you won't learn anything. So stop trying to reach out to the best of your ability to those who you deem perfect, because they're not perfect. And even when you do reach out to others, they actually have their own things to worry about. So yeah, make your own bed and stop worrying about stop worrying about what's happening in the house next door.
Well, let me get to that thing about Cyril Ramaphosa in a second. But I mean, look, Daz has opened up the floodgates, and he did said a second ago, where's it at? He said, hang on a second, let me find this. He said something about, sorry, I'm rich and pissed. I mean, there it is. I'm rich and pissed at the same time, but not as thick. I hope you mean by pissed, you're angry and not drunk, because if you're drunk, then you're going to wake up and you realize you donated all this money. But if you're just angry, that's fine. We're here to help with the anger. Yeah. Nothing. So since that happened, he's opened the floodgates. Leovin Janssen van Rensburg gave 140 Rand super chat. So he said, well, at least I know Koketso has good taste in wine. Yes, you do know that. And then Chris Holmes, who's in Arizona, he's in Australia, gave 10 Australian dollars saying, great show. Paulie, our firefighter chief there in Cape Town now, relocated from Gauteng, gave a 99.99, 100 Rand super chat. Thank you for that. You guys are awesome tonight. It's really cool. Okay, now let me get to the Ramaphosa thing and get back to Koketso here. I find it especially galling and irritating because the South African government is largely relieved from the business of providing antiretrovirals for the millions of South Africans living on antiretrovirals because we pay for that. We pay for that. If we weren't paying for that through USAID to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars per year, the South African government would have to pay for that because they provide the healthcare. That's the first thing. Second thing is that we gave, the European Union and the United States gave Aspen Pharmacare $711 million. That is 12 billion Rand. Well, now it's 15 billion Rand because exchange rate's gone sideways. 15 billion Rand 2 years ago, in August of 2021, to manufacture Rona jabs for distribution in Africa. How many jabs have produced? Zero. Where did that money go? Where did the $4.3 billion that the IMF, the World Bank, the BRICS Bank, and the African Development Bank gave to the ANC in the summer of 2020 during the pandemic from August to September to October? Where's that $4.3 billion? That was 90 billion rand. No one knows where it's gone. I am so sick of this bogus nonsense from fake political African leaders playing this race game when they're squandering, stealing, and misusing. And the list goes on. You have preferential trade status. All of your goods come into America duty-free, yet you put 75% tariffs on our chicken exports to South Africa. Not you, Koketso, obviously, but Cyril Ramaphosa and his government. These people are such frauds. And the people that are uninformed and fall for it, I find particularly frustrating.
Yeah, it's very frustrating, especially for, one of my pillars is I believe, over and above capitalism, free markets, etc. But I believe in meritocracy.
Oh, yeah.
And that is the one thing that annoys me, or that annoys the left about me. I believe in meritocracy. If you are not good enough, then you shouldn't be there. If you are not good enough to be at the table, then you shouldn't be shouting from the rooftops about how much you deserve a seat at the table because you couldn't get one before because of the previous regime, etc., etc. Now, I want people who can do the job to do the job. I don't care what color of skin they are. I don't care about their historical background. I don't care about any of that. Fun fact: did you know that pretty much anyone related to Nelson Mandela that has the surname never changes it?
Yeah.
The woman get married, never changes the surname.
Or they make it a hyphenated one.
Yeah, or they make it a hyphenated one. Why? Because they want to ride out the Mandela wave as much as they can. And a lot of them are rewarded for being a Mandela, but they are actually useless.
Yeah. Well, it's
we find this a lot.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So today I covered the unveiling, the big reveal from NASA. And look, NASA, the National Aerospace and Aeronautics and Space Administration, has done amazing things for the United States, for the world. They've done amazing discoveries, and it's been incredible. And yes, the organization was overwhelmingly male, and of course white male, when it was founded back in the 1950s. And that was the case up until about the 1970s when it began to change. But they have gone so far with this equity and inclusion sort of nonsense that it's completely warped everything. It's kind of like, we hear in America for decades now, since 2000, this constant drumbeat that STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics.
Engineering and math.
Right. That women aren't in STEM. Women are discredited. Women don't get a chance. They have put so much energy into STEM now that it has completely skewed the outcomes. Over 60% of masters and PhDs granted in those fields in America go to women. Only 38% go to men. Men are wildly underrepresented in those fields because of this bias in one direction rather than taking a balanced approach. If you watch the NASA broadcast today, I made a lot of jokes about it because it was silly. Not one, other than Bill Nelson, who's an octogenarian senator who runs NASA, the old white guy. He's the old white guy running it. But not one person that was brought out on the stage to speak, to involve, to talk about the discoveries was a male, let alone a white male. All women. And women of color, it went on and on and on. And only one of those people that spoke there actually knew what they were talking about without using a teleprompter, other than Bill Nelson. It's ridiculous. That's not merit-based. That's not merit-based. That's equity and inclusion-based, which doesn't enrich anybody. What say you?
Yeah. I have a few bones to pick with that entire industry. Now, I personally know people who work in that industry. Great people. And and I've been saying this for 2 years now that actually it's been a while, so I actually want to have coffee with a couple of them, just to hear their side of the story a little bit, because to me, at first thought, this really does distort outcomes. The problem when you distort outcomes is you're actually affecting innovation. And when you affect innovation, you're actually affecting technology and the way we progress forward as a species. I'll give you a good example. When was the last time the US or NASA particularly actually made groundbreaking innovation in the past 5 years?
They haven't.
Nothing.
It's all been in the private sector. It's all been SpaceX and Boeing.
Yeah, precisely. I was going to get to that, to say that, right, the NASA itself, seemingly, I don't know much, of course, but seemingly they haven't done much. But where we do see movement is in the private sector. At the same time, right, on the other side of the world, you've got nations like India now starting to be players inside of that space game. Who would have thought that? Why are we finding this? Because there's a gaping hole now in terms of innovation and getting the actual work done that didn't exist before. The hole now exists because we are prioritizing differently. So what happened the other day, I'm trying to remember the exact details. I think there was a conference, a recruitment drive type conference in Silicon Valley, where some of the top tech firms are there. So, your Silicon Valley-based Palo Alto firms, your Google, HP, Oracle, and the likes. So there was an event where, all the companies are going to be there, and all the graduates are invited to attend because, you may get your what we call a graduate program here. I don't know what you call it there. But essentially, all your guys who are just finishing up with, who have just finished school and are looking to get recruited, etc., you put everyone in one big room, typically a warehouse, you host a conference or a trade show or something similar. And you get to do some FaceTime with your potential next employer. Happens every year, of course, because people have just graduated over there. Now, this time what's been done is, as part of the online registration form, they're now asking you about your gender. In addition to everything else. And one of these events, so there'll be a few of these events, and on one specific one, the requirements was for basically non-males. Why? Because they're trying to do a big drive to have more women in STEM fields. Now, this is where they shoot themselves in the foot here. They want non-males. And part of their online registration form, when they're asking you about your gender or quote unquote what you identify as, there was an option in there for non-binary. So there's a hell of a lot of guys who went on there and registered themselves as non-binary. And on the day of the symposium, or
it's
whatever,
all dudes that show up.
Half the crowd is dudes who have legitimately registered and picked the option to be non-binary. Now, the kicker here is that even when they go there, they're just dressed as normal dudes.
Yeah.
So obviously the organizers are a little bit perplexed here and try turning away some of the dudes by saying, no, you guys came to the system. And that's when the dudes then come back and say, oh, are you misgendering me?
That's when woke comes back to bite woke in the bum. That's what's going on. It's just, that's why we can't entertain this lunacy. It's absolutely ridiculous. Actually, I know somebody recently that was reading a book. This is sold in the Barnes & Noble, the bookstore here. It was on sale. And, you buy a coffee, you get it for $5. It's which is a third of the price because they're pushing it. But I talked to this person. They said, they showed me the book. I said, would you look at this? I'm like, or listen to this? I'm like, yeah, go ahead. And the person read a passage and I'm thinking, okay, they're talking about some group. No, they were using pronouns like they to talk about a singular person, and it completely destroyed the English language. I had no idea what was going on. And that's what the person told me. He said, this makes no sense. I can't read this. This is garbage. I mean, it's just ridiculous. We can't entertain this nonsense. Humankind has survived for millennia without this idiocy. You can respect people for who they are if they want to be something. You cannot contort the language. I mean, it's not, English is not special. Just because we speak English doesn't mean we can entertain this nonsense. Try doing this in German, Koketso. I don't know if you know much about German, but German has 3 pronouns, and it changes with each case: the accusative, the dative, the genitive, anyway, so der becomes D becomes D, Dane and Darren, Dace and Dame. You can't do that. You wouldn't be able to communicate at all. And I can see it already in English. It's so irritating. But yeah, no, the whole STEM thing is nonsense. Women far outnumber men in the field. It's so skewed now in the opposite direction. It's kind of like our commercials in America. Watch a television commercial. It's not just here, it's in France too. White males are an endangered species. On my Roku last night, night. I had it on watching something. I was watching that stupid 2.5 Men show. I just put it on the background. The commercials came on. I looked up just for something because I was working. And every commercial, there isn't a single white person in the commercial. Black Americans represent less than 13% of the population, yet they represent 96% of the people in my commercials. I mean, do these companies intentionally do that? I mean, is this a phase? And I asked that because I remember about 20 years ago, there was this Latino phase, when Ricky Martin was big and everything, all the commercials, everybody was Hispanic. And then it suddenly went back to where there was a normal distribution of, I say normal, but what represents the population.
Factory settings.
Yeah, back to the factory.
Because in some areas, there is a much larger proportion.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so you'll see more of those adverts on the media.
And look, in South Africa, you see that now. You see very targeted advertising in places where a lot of white South Africans are. You'll see more ads for white South Africans. But much of what I see in the advertising market in South Africa now are black South Africans, who are the majority pretty much in most places. So it makes sense. But yeah, I guess the factory default settings. But it's just so obvious. And so, I mean, it doesn't fool anybody. And you know what I love about it, Koketso? Is that in America, on TikTok, that is the great place where you find black conservatives and reasonable black Americans who just obliterate this nonsense. It's like the Vikings. They're making Vikings because inclusion. They're putting black actors in as Vikings. And this guy's like, dude, there were no black people in Norway. What are you talking about? And as a black American, I'm insulted by this. And you should be. I'm insulted by it too. Look, if I played Dr. King, I could do it. I've been an actor. I've done performances, especially in German. Yeah. If I played Dr. King, people would lose their mind. Now, if I played Moses or Santa Claus, they probably wouldn't mind. But if I played Dr. King or Malcolm X in a biography, they would lose their mind. But we've got black dudes playing Alexander Hamilton. Come on, man. This isn't even remotely credible.
Yeah, the double standards are quite fascinating. Yeah, maybe on the next Nako, we actually need to talk about Disney. Specifically Disney.
Now, let's talk about Disney, but I'm going to get a couple comments from the chat real quick, okay? So, okay. So, there's, Hendo saying, don't worry about the World Bank. That money's gone, yeah. Nas says, sorry, should I wait till the end to donate? No. And he says, he puts M8, so I assume that's mate. Mate, you're worth more. Well, I think I'm worth more, but yeah, feel free to donate anytime you like if you can afford it. And then Wendy was asking about why we're concerned about, we're not concerned about the jab. I'm concerned about $711 million and Cyril Ramaphosa's fraudulent race hustling about jab apartheid. That's what he read out saying. Vaccine apartheid. Yeah. Remember that? That's nonsense. The money, the recipe, the formula, the centrifuges were all given to Aspen Pharmacare by the U.S. and Europeans. It's nonsense. And then there was a couple more here I want to get to really quickly here. Drinking rum and Coke. Well, good for you, Charles. I'm not drinking anything. And then Daz Nell said, the guy who's been getting all super chat says, your stream is suppressed by 99% on YouTube. I'm well aware of that. And that's why it's so comical when race hustlers and leftist bigots and clowns attack me and go, your little channel. Dude, you have no idea. Koketso, you know this. You were at that meet and greet when like 50, 60 people showed up. And I'm not boasting. Those people came to see me because they want, and I got recognized. Sorry, I got to digress here for a second because that point's there. I got recognized all over France. I don't even broadcast in French, but now these were South Africans and expats who follow South Africa, who were in France or live in France, who follow me. I mean, I got recognized at the in Paris a dozen times at a game with 50,000 people milling around. Hey, Colonel, I know you. And then I'm in Bordeaux, I get recognized. I got recognized in Marseille and in Lyon. I never expected, so it's insane. And in South Africa, I cannot misbehave, Koketso. First off, your mom would correct me if I misbehave. I couldn't do that. But if I she would correct me because she's an honorable woman. But if I misbehave in South Africa, people will know about it. They'll blab about, I saw Chris coming at us. Because people know me. So you are correct, Daz. That is a fact. But you know what? People say go to Rumble, but nobody goes to Rumble. I have like 600 followers. Go to Odyssey. Nobody goes to Odyssey. There is intentional suppression of me for whatever reason. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that my bona fides are unimpeachable. People cannot claim that I wasn't a colonel. They can, but it's nonsense. They can't claim they don't speak 6 languages. They can't claim they're not a published author. They can't claim that I didn't teach undergraduate and postgraduate school, that I served the defense intelligence. The list goes on, and that I wrote for the President of the United States, because those experiences are real. They're part of who I am, and I know that. and they don't like my analysis. So I'm a target. I know that my channel will never have 200,000 or 2 million subscribers until someone who has the means, who doesn't have objective and tells me what to do, comes along and sponsors my own web server and my own site. This is kind of the platform I'm on. So I'm sorry to go on a little tangent there, Koketso, but I want to do that. And Das says, it only takes one to make a difference. You're making a difference. I believe that. And sorry, Koketso, indulge me for another minute here. We are co-host here. But
it's okay.
but my first trip to South Africa, back after the Rona stuff, in August of 2022, Ronaldo and many of my viewers kept telling me, Chris, you have no idea the impact you've had in South Africa, the lives you've influenced, the people you've helped get through this pandemic, the eyes you've opened up. And look, I'm like, look, at heart, Koketso, you know me, but you don't know me that well because we haven't spent hours and hours together. I'm genuinely, honestly, and I'm not boasting, I'm a humble person. We all come in this world the same way, pretty much. Some go C-section. I came naturally. But we all go out eventually too, sadly. And I don't take myself that seriously. At heart, I'm a humble person. I may boast and joke, but I always tell people that when I'm joking around about it, it's not real. But when Ronaldo would tell me that, and some of my viewers who are very devout viewers would tell me all that stuff, I'm like, thank you, I appreciate it. But it's kind of like water off a duck's back, it just kind of slid off. I didn't really take it seriously. But then I went to South Africa, and the warm welcome I got from so many people and the genuineness of it, it was just unbelievable. And I began to believe it was true. And then, I got back here and like my numbers were down, people weren't watching. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I kind of believe something. I'm not going to believe my own press. And then I went back this year, again, just a few months later in January and February, and 27 times. I mean, in Zeerust, Koketso, people over Zeerust coming up recognize me. Zeerust of all places. Then this last trip, I'm in Eiserfontein, and people recognize me. It's just, and it wasn't once. It was the point of the story is that yes, you're right, Das. I am having an impact, but it's frustrating not to see it tangibly in data. It's not there because of what's going on. But I mean, if I'm full of it, you all can tell me I'm full of it. Koketso, if you think I'm full of it, you can tell me I'm full of it, and I won't take offense because I don't want to have an ego that's outside here because I don't. But it's just frustrating how stuff gets crushed. But anyway, I'll stop there. Anyway, so I just want to address that. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, no, look, fair enough. I kind of like what Musk is doing with X.
Yeah, I do too. I've been much freer in what I say on there now.
Yeah, because he's trying to build, include the building blocks that would effectively, maybe over time, allow for things like this. Maybe in future we'll be streaming to there. My issue with Musk, however, is he couldn't just keep his egotism in check here by doing a rename of the platform.
Yeah, everything's got to be X. SpaceX.
I think he lost the plot there, and
he did.
He just kept the name and really build in those building blocks and evolve the platform without necessarily having to change the name. And he's changing the name because I own the thing now. So, but the president has been said. I mean, look at the perfect example, if there ever was going to be one, is Tucker Carlson right now. Tucker Carlson, if he streams on X, and I'm sure he will be soon because he posts long form videos on there now. I don't know his frequency, but imagine he does something live. He's going to pull in more eyeballs than if mainstream media on primetime television combined. His numbers could potentially rival Super Bowl numbers.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, you look at what the media gets on cable, the news networks, and the broadcast, and they're lucky if they get 2.3 million viewers for these shows, the big shows. I mean, the smaller ones like MSNBC get 500,000 on a good day.
And he would drag in like 8 million or so just for his show.
Easily, without a doubt. That's why it's like with Trump. Before Trump lost the election, before that happened, at YouTube, you can't censor me. I preached the party line there. Okay, before Trump lost the election, I said in that summer of 2020 when I was getting my channel going and we're talking, I said, if somehow Trump doesn't win this election, I actually said that in June, July, and August. I said he should already have his people who are running his portfolio, tell them to start working on a social media platform, to overcome the censorship because he failed to deal with the 1996 Telecommunications Act and the protections that these people have. He should have done with that from the time he came in office, but not that he would have accomplished it, but he should have addressed it. But he waited till the end and he started screaming about censorship. He should have his people working on a platform that does what Twitter does with short form, what does videos like YouTube, that does Facebook-like postings and communities, and Instagram. Bring all that together in one platform, have industrial strength security because you know that the leftists are going to try to break into it and hack it from all over the world and shut it down. Have multiple nodes in Europe, in Africa, in Asia, in North America so that you can't shut it down. He would be able to get the week it's announced, if he came out Truth Social, which hasn't worked out nearly as well because it's just a copycat of Twitter and it's not that impressive. But if he had done this and done it well, he would have had 20 million subscribers within 2 weeks, and he would have had 50 million subscribers willing to pay, probably 20 million of them, $19.95 a month just to have access to all this. I would pay it. I'd pay $100 a month to have access to all this stuff and not be censored. But Trump missed the boat, and I think Elon Musk is missing the boat too. He's promised a PayPal-like function on Twitter. It hasn't come yet. He's promised to have the long-form videos. I guess Tucker can get it, but I've tried to load videos, and I can only load videos that are a certain size. Maybe special people get special circumstances. And look, I'll admit, Tucker's special, so he deserves it. But the list goes on and on. It kind of missed it. And we got another super chat. The channel was a bit of a sanctuary for me during the pandemic, says Chris Holmes. And Chris Holmes, to let you know, Koketso, lives in Australia, and he's one of those brave souls that participated in those the Melbourne rallies where 600,000 people showed up to reject the government's fascism. And we live stream. And Chris on his mobile was walking around and we had it. It was awesome. Anyway, so I just had to digress with that. Thanks.
Yeah, no, these are great stories to hear. And I like how your channel also, brings people from the global village that is planet Earth into one common space, at least for a time. But yeah, you're right. I think, with Truth Social, even with what Musk is doing, they make the common mistake that Americans make every time. Sorry, my phone's ringing here. Let me just...
It's all right. Chris Holmes just gave it $9.69 Australian dollar super chat. I'm not sure why $9.69, but he said the channel was a bit of a sanction. That's why I just read that. And then Nas, the guy super chatting all the time, says, "You think my donations made a dent on you? I hope so. Everybody in the whole of Africa wants to hear you. Make the change. You already have 20 million views on my clips from." Okay. And then Tucker wants to speak to you. Well, I'd love to speak to Tucker and to Dinesh D'Souza, but here's the thing. I'm not going to say this about Tucker because I am the person that in January of 2020 pointed out to people, not here, but on LinkedIn, because I wasn't doing this then, but on LinkedIn, I point out, and then when I started this channel a few months later, I told people the same thing. I said, Tucker Carlson is the only investigative journalist on the planet who's looking out for humankind. He is uncovering things that the elites are covering up that they're ignoring. And I said that he was the only journalist the first week of January 2nd, January 3rd of 2020, who said, while the rest of the world is navel gazing at the impeachment that they're trying to do against Trump, there's something happening in a town in China called Wuhan. And it's going to come to our shores. He did that the first week on Fox News. And then, of course, the reason he's gone from Fox is because he got the publicly available now January 6 tapes from the congressional building that they were trying to hide. Anyway, Tucker, I won't say anything bad about Tucker. I'd love to be interviewed. But the thing with Dinesh D'Souza and Ben Shapiro and guys like that is they travel in little cliques. And unless you get into that clique, they don't talk to you. Now, Scott Presser, so that's the thing. So I've tried to interview some of these people, can never get in. I've gotten people who are serious people like Victor Davis Hanson. I've interviewed him several times in the past. He's fantastic. He's brilliant political scientist from Stanford, the Hoover Institution. And I've gotten A.F. Bronco, the cartoonist, but that's as close as I got. I couldn't get to the inner sanctum of these known conservatives and those who are big out there. And if you can't catch on. If Tucker Carlson wants to talk to me, I will talk to him at any hour of the day, at any time, on any subject he wants. Sorry. Anyway, I had to say that.
Maybe this is prophecy.
Maybe.
Maybe. But I was saying before my phone was ringing that the mistake that Americans and American firms do quite a lot is they come up with these great new features, ideas, platforms, etc., and then they only make it available to themselves. And then me on the other side of the world, I don't have access to it for weeks, months, sometimes years. So yeah, of course, there is rationale to say, I mean, if you're Trump, you're trying to use Truth Social as a means to rally your supporter base and as well as market yourself as the best election candidate possible. So really your scope is inside of the USA. But at the end of the day, it's still a social media platform. And if you're going to take down the likes of your big tech who operate at a global level, you should be operating at a global level.
Agreed.
And
100%.
this is also, and this speaks into why some of the features Musk has mentioned, he hasn't actually been able to pull it off yet, because things like international payments, etc., that's very difficult to actually get set up. The likes of your big guys, your Googles and the likes, they already have everything in place. Hence, most of the world can even do something as simple as sending a super chat. Now, imagine trying to do that on X, formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the right relationships with. I mean, I think the platform uses Stripe as their payment. As the payment partner. Stripe isn't the full-blown Stripe, not the Stripe Express.
Yeah,
the
but
full-blown Stripe.
But it's not a particularly good way to do it.
Yeah, but again, he'd have to ramp up his headcount and then get directly into relationships with Visa, MasterCard, etc. if he wants to bypass that.
And that's a problem. Yeah, exactly. And that's a problem he also has as far as infrastructure, is that a lot of the people who worked at that platform were woke and just, left or got sacked. And I suspect he probably doesn't have a lot of the intellectual capital that he needs to pull these things off as quickly as he'd like to. That's my supposition.
Yeah, then there's that. So was he right to maybe lay off the majority of the staff? I believe so. The consequence of that is, like my personal computer's a Mac, for example. The Mac application for Twitter, I'm the type of guy that uses first-party applications. I don't like going in via Firefox or whatever. No, I don't use Chrome. I like to use an actual app, but the Twitter app has since died or is no longer fully functional because the team that was responsible for keeping it going have been laid off.
Yep, they're gone.
And then he's killed the third-party support as well. So even your third-party options can't really give you a good experience because the team that would keep the third-party applications in check has also been laid off. So yeah, he's lost that. Do I get his rationale? Yes. But for him to really have the kind of features that he's actually touting to really challenge the established players, he's going to have to make some changes, and those are not going to be quick. And in the meantime, until someone does anything about it, even platforms such as yours, you're forced to use the big players, the same ones who are very eager to do censorship, the same ones who are very eager to not necessarily even censor you sometimes, but bury your content beneath mountains of the usual fluff, if I can call it that. They'd rather serve me videos about cats and dogs and than things I actually am interested in, of which they know what I'm interested in because they keep track of everything I do, right? But yeah, they know that I'm interested in topics such as these, but they don't want to give me content on topics such as these because it's going to solidify my knowledge base and increase my knowledge. So yeah, it's a very difficult one, but in terms of that, let's see how far it actually goes. And maybe the long game is where we need to actually focus on. And that's exactly what he's trying to do. But like I mentioned, my only problem with him is he just couldn't keep his ego in check in all of this.
Well, yeah, it's not just his ego. Look, I agree with you. It's a long game. He's a smart entrepreneur. He's got probably the right ideas and right way to go. But the thing about Elon Musk, when he announced his bid to take over Twitter, people are like, yeah! I'm like, calm down. First off, he hasn't bought Twitter because that's how it was announced. He bought Twitter. No. He made an offer to the board. First off, the board has to review it and approve it. Then they have to take it to shareholders to approve it. Then the Securities Exchange Commission has to approve that purchase because of the nature and the field that it's in. Then he has to come up with $40 billion because he may have $50 billion in cash because he just sold all his Tesla stock.
His SpaceX stock.
Right.
Yeah.
But after paying taxes, he didn't have $50 billion anymore. he had to pay $14 billion in taxes. So, he doesn't have $40 billion in cash. By the way, that's a little known thing that people don't talk about. he doesn't own the company exclusively. There are people who are investors who came in with him, and also debt they took on to buy Twitter. So that's important to understand. But the thing about him, I said, listen, if that all happens and he takes over, I got no problem with it. But if you think that Elon Musk is a free speech advocate, I'm going to correct you on that, because he's not. He's an entrepreneur who likes to do things his way. And if you butt heads with him, I guarantee you, you're going to run into trouble. And so Musk takes over the company, and he starts butting heads with people, and they hit the road, Jack. Also, many of the doctors who push back on the Rona events have yet to have their Twitter accounts restored. Alex Jones, who I don't care for, he's way out there, but Alex Jones has not had his Twitter account restored. Lots of people have not had their Twitter accounts restored. And I post things that are not profane, they're not insults, and I'm a blue check mark, and I get warnings. Are you sure you want to say that? Most people don't use that kind of language. Like, what are you talking about?
I've seen that before.
Most people don't use that language. You got people calling me a racist and white supremacist on this platform. That's a lie. It's slander. It's a criminal offense. You allow that, and when I report it, you don't remove it. But when I say some elected politician is a moron because they are, that is something people don't say. So look, he's a brilliant entrepreneur. I'm glad he bought Twitter. I hope he's going the right direction. But people need to not put all their faith in that. We need much more in this ecosphere than simply relying on Elon Musk. We have to reform the Telecommunications Act of 1996. We have to hold these tech companies accountable. And then in my country, Koketso, we need to investigate, pursue, and prosecute the people in the federal government, in the bureaucracy, and the politicians who undermine the Constitution by getting media, the big tech media, either by cajoling, colluding, or coercing them to silence people because they had voices that were in opposition to the official narrative. That has to be done. And until that's done, it's not going to be a brighter day. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, but for that to happen, you'd have to change Speaker of the House.
Well, mostly. But the numbers have to change. The Senate's under control
the numbers have to change.
And many of the senators who are Republicans are rhinos, Republican name. They're not actual conservatives. And the Democrats, who are the ones who helped craft this, along with Republicans back in the 90s, they're not legitimate politicians. They're just like the ANC. They'll simply vote the way they're told to vote. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous. They vote against things in the best interest of the United States. It's shocking. But they'll do what the Democratic Party tells them. Now, many Republicans will do the same, but at least some Republicans will vote for the people when it's for the people. It's just very frustrating. Politics is so sick. It's so twisted, not just in South Africa, but also here in the States, in the UK. So it really breaks my heart. I mean, I grew up studying political science and history, believing in these systems, believing in these institutions, and believing that we had free will and free choice. But each and every day I start to question that.
Yeah, and that's a good question to keep asking yourself. I mean, I never got into it professionally. To the surprise of many of my high school teachers, all of them thought I'd get into politics or at the very least into the legal professions. In the end, I didn't either. So, years later, you meet some of them at various occasions, you tell them what you're doing or what you're working towards, and then they are surprised that, we really thought, they tell me that they really thought I was going to end up in law or maybe in politics. And my answer is always the same. And I've said it on this show before, that A, I don't have the right surname. B, I don't have the right struggle credentials. And C, I don't have the right accent either. So
you, in baseball terms, you struck out. 3 strikes.
That's all 3 strikes, and that's why it could never work. But funny enough, I have been approached by more than 3 parties now to join them in some official capacity. I've turned all of them down. One of them, they didn't even tell me who they were. They just sent an envoy to extend an offer of if I'd like to get involved, and I turned it down on the spot. So, but I digress. But being a politician in an official capacity, maybe I'll do that when I've decided I've done my part to try change Africa for the better.
Well, I can tell you this much, Koketso. No political parties approached me. No, but we just have the two-party system here. I mean, if it's South Africa, it'd probably be a different story because there's such a such a cacophony of parties that are all looking for a face, a voice, someone that catches on with people. If I was South African, I bet you I would have been approached by a couple parties, but nobody in America. I mean, I attack the Republicans all the time, even though I'm a registered Republican, because they just aren't up to the task. But anyway.
Yeah, but on principle, you want to hold everyone to the same high standard, right?
Yeah.
That includes people you would naturally lean towards when it's time to give you a vote. So your high standard isn't reserved for your political opponents, where you set the bar really high knowing that they'll never reach it. You keep that same bar for those who you do intend to vote as well, because that's how you keep them honest. We don't have that in South Africa. That's that's my second biggest complaint with the South African political landscape. The first one, which I've mentioned before, is that I believe we have an immature electorate. Our voters, the people in our voters' roll, are electorally immature. When people decide that they're going to vote ANC because they're the ones who were the liberation movement that got us into democracy. And then when the ANC starts messing up, instead of punishing the ANC by voting for someone else, they prefer to stay home on voting day and not vote at all.
Which is just the same effect. It doesn't help at all.
Yeah, that's political immaturity to me, firstly.
It's juvenile.
Yeah. And then secondly, the same people, when we start speaking of the alternatives to the ANC, suddenly they have these impossibly high standards for the Democratic Alliance and for the Freedom Fund Plus, for the ACDP.
But not for the ANC.
Not for the ANC or even the EFF.
Yeah.
Those standards don't apply to the ANC or the EFF. I mean, common example, the Auditor General, I don't know what's the equivalent in the US.
The Auditor General?
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't know that we have. I don't think we have one at the national level. I'm trying to equate it within federal agencies. We have the equivalent of that.
There will be a federal equivalent somehow.
Yeah, inside agencies, but it's not one for the country. Like we have inspector generals, which is like your solicitor general, but it's not quite the same, but it's similar. So yeah, I don't think we have quite that same role. Yeah.
Well, yeah, for those that don't know, in one sentence, the Auditor General in South Africa is a state institution that is effectively the government's auditors, fully accountable to the public. They report quarterly and yearly on how money is being spent by the government.
Oh, we have the GAO, the Government Accountability Office. That's their role.
Okay, and do they do like public reports periodically?
Oh yeah. They're the ones. Yeah, they the budget, they reveal it, the spending. There
we go.
And they're also the ones that they send. They also do inspections of different government agencies and things like that.
There we go. Yeah. So that's the Auditor General equivalent.
Yeah.
Now, what the AG does in South Africa is they monitor state entities, they monitor national departments, they monitor municipalities as well, and then they'll give a report. And lo and behold, most municipalities throughout the country are being run by the ANC, and the Auditor General's report is always damning. Always. Every single time. The amount of, this is jaw-dropping stuff in terms of how much money goes missing. Every time on a repeat basis. And of course, you can assume that money's been pilfered somehow, and the people who are doing the pilferage still retain their jobs, and they get to come back for round 2 to steal again, and round 3 and round 4, despite the Auditor General coming out with a damning report that shows that, right, from the money you were given, really in the real sense, only about 64% of it can actually be accounted for. From the remaining percentage, some of it goes unspent, so it's sent back to government, and some of it, we have no record of where it went. And that's classified as irregular expenditure. That really money was spent, but you can't account for it.
What's really sad about this, Koketso, is that when the ANC first got in the business of stealing from South Africans, they were very inept at it. Remember, Tony Yangeni went to prison for discounted auto loan. That's the kind of level of corruption. But now it's industrial scale looting, and it's sophisticated. So, for instance, when I was in Port Elizabeth, Nelson Mandela Bay, I linked up with Ronaldo, and he took me down. I went to his ward office. He showed me where his office is down there by the beach. Nice little setup.
Yeah.
And but you can see that things have seen better days. They haven't been maintained in that area.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he took me out, walked me around, and he showed me the light poles that are all been cut down, all the wire cable theft that's gone on for the lights for the beach. He showed me where they've stripped all of the spigots and faucets where people can come off the beach and rinse off the salt water. Like they have those in Durban.
Yeah,
every beach.
yeah.
That's all gone. It's all. And then he showed me where people are living in the abolition units where they've stripped all the fixtures off. There's no water in there now. They're defecating inside there and stuff like that. And so he said, "You see the poles?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, it's the cable thieves." He goes, No. The cable thieves didn't do that. Look at the cut, and it's a very even cut." He said, "The gangsters come through here." Well, my word, not his, but these are BEE tenders, actually. They come through here with the saws, the ones that cut metal. They cut all the light poles down, and then the cable thieves
that a tender can be...
Yes, exactly right.
Issued.
Exactly, so that they replace it, because each one of those light poles is 19,000 Rand. So now they get 50 poles. They've just made themselves wealthy. This is how perverse things have become in South Africa. That they're destroying infrastructure to get the tenders to replace it. And of course, then they'll destroy that infrastructure.
At inflated prices, by the way.
Of course. That light pole should probably be about 6,000, not 19,000. Just a guess. I don't know. I'm just saying. But so that's how perverse things have gotten. And that reminds me, when I was in the village where your mom lives there, up near the border with Botswana, that service delivery protest, I asked your mom about it. She goes, yeah, it's not really that. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, it's for water. I said, so they don't have water? No, they've got water. I said, then why are they doing it? Because they pay these kids to go out there and burn tires and throw stones and stand on the road and delay and cause chaos, because they want the tender to go to a different company, even though they're already getting water. So it's a fake service delivery protest. They have water. It's sad. It's sad.
It's very sad. And look, at every corner you look, you'll find, let me not say similar stories, but very creative stories at every corner where you look. And this is where the missing money goes. It goes to inflated budgets. It goes to money being laundered from municipal coffers into the back pockets of politicians and politically connected individuals. Mm-hmm. And every year, every quarter, this is reported on, and the outrage from the public is minimal.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get a guy like me who tries to highlight this, at least on my various platforms. And every time I do this, a stranger is going to come across and say, I don't know what I'm talking about. Irregular expenditure doesn't mean the money was stolen. It simply means a receipt was misplaced and they couldn't find it. Therefore, they have to classify this as irregular expenditure. Yeah, irregular expenditure in the billions of rands.
Yeah, and it's consistent too, all the time.
Consistently, 1 billion rand, going missing every year from one department, from one portfolio, from one province, meaning you could exponentially rinse and repeat this across the entire country. And that's where we are, So is there money? Yes. Is it being spent well? No. Now, the reason I brought this up is, this goes back to that high standards I mentioned. This happens 9 times out of 10 where you find the ANC. And every now and then there'll be, a similar thing where the DA is running shop. And when that happens, the media will make this big hullabaloo about it. But when you actually inspect the numbers, you'll find that, okay, this is not a regular occurrence here. That's point number 1. Point number 2, the amounts are nowhere near what the ANC pilfers in the municipality next door, for example. But they'll make a big thing out of the DA's one. They'll even come out and say, yeah, but the DA has been selling themselves as this clean, spotless, guardian angel, white dove political party. That's why we are highlighting this, because they present themselves as angels, but they're also guilty of much of the same that the ANC is guilty of. That's the outrage. That's that's the kind of stuff people are willing to go outraged over. But when the ANC does it at a much larger scale, no one says a thing. So the standards, they're not applied equally. So the least thing I can do, because I believe in principles, and the reason I believe in principles is that principles don't change. You could have one president from one party today, another president from another one tomorrow. But if you retain your principles, it doesn't matter who the president is. It doesn't matter what religion you're in. It doesn't matter your economic status, for example. Your principles remain. And for me, the principle is, if you're in government, I want you to do your job, spend my tax money wisely, and deliver on the service you promised to do, and deliver on the oath you took as a public servant, particularly those in high office. And when you don't, you've broken the principle. But seemingly, certain people from certain parties, they're allowed to break the principle all day, every day. And when others do it on an occasional basis, suddenly we should throw our toys and make an issue out of it. But when the primary guys in charge, and he does it all the time, yeah, it's just another day, this is how it is. And that's why you end up with, crumbling infrastructure that is slowly crumbling, but it's happening at an accelerated rate now. And no one wants to say anything about it. We've accepted the rot that is the ANC.
Indeed.
And that saddens me. Yeah.
Indeed. Phala. Travelgate. Oilgate. The Vreda dairy farm, the asbestos contract in the Free State, Zandile Gumeda, Digital Vibes. I haven't even got started here.
And the water contract at Hammanskraal.
Yeah, there you go. And wonder why we've got cholera. Talk about embarrassing, a country like South Africa having cholera. But they're not alone. Zimbabwe's had a bunch of deaths, unfortunately, recently from cholera, but that's understandable. That's another kleptocracy. But, the ANC has really put ZANU-PF to shame. They are just rookies compared to the ANC now, and it's just got worse with the pandemic. And it's just it's strange to think that Eskom was voted the best public utility in the world just 2 decades ago. Ago. What happened?
And I'm in my early 30s, and I still remember this. This was in my lifetime. Once upon a time, you'd have dreams of working at Eskom one day because it was this shining star.
It's a nightmare now. I wouldn't go near with a 10-foot pole.
Well, unless you've got criminal intent.
Well, yeah. I suppose if that's the case, if you're a caterer, you might want to go there. But otherwise, yeah. No, I don't mean, for years, I thought that Eskom could be salvaged by privatizing it, breaking down into functional capabilities. But I don't even know if that's even possible now. I mean, the rot is just so bad. It's really sad.
On paper, that would work. On paper, that would
of course,
work.
On
the
paper,
issue we have is not with this current leadership, though.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the list goes on and on. I see Garrett's just mentioned South African Airways, and you've got Transnet, you've got Airports Company South Africa. It just goes on and on. Sure. And these commies just want to keep introducing things that they're counterproductive to the free market. This national health insurance scam, everyone has crappy care instead of being able to buy care if you can afford it, It's crazy.
Yeah, basic income grant is also, the conversation for that is starting to pick up steam. Well, we call it a basic income grant. Some call it universal basic income, etc., etc.
Oh, gosh.
It is election cycle. So, all of these are starting to come up now. But the reality is, and this is what I tell people who, I get asked by ordinary folks who really don't want to have political conversations in public. So they ask me when I'm in the room, and I tell them all the time that the reality is South Africa's running out of taxpayers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Those who haven't fled and those who are avoiding taxation, it's just, it's epic. I think they've kind of run out a long time ago. The only reason the ANC has survived the past 4 years is because of handouts from the developed world. And that's why they're so hot on getting this $8.5 billion promise for the just energy transition, which while we're talking about the just energy transition, we got the electric slide minister. It's electric. You can do it. Boogie, woogie, woogie. Anyway, the electric slide minister, he's, well,
yeah.
I mean, I like his dance moves anyway. But he's out there saying that, oh, no, we're not going to shut down the coal-fired power plants. Well, dude, if you want the 8.5 billion, that's what they're paying you to do. Anyway, so, I'm like burn coal, baby, burn. I'm not for shutting down the coal-fired power plants. So I'm with the electric slide minister, but it's not a winning argument if you take that to the halls of Washington or London or Paris, where they're expecting you to freeze in South Africa by shutting down your coal-fired power plants. But anyway, that's just another story for another day.
Yeah, that's that. And again, the reality here is that we shouldn't even be having this conversation to begin with. Those coal power plants, they were built by a regime under international sanctions.
Yeah, and they lasted 50 years. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. So enough said on that same regime was able to build a nuclear power station as well.
And take the Ribbentrop process, Fisher-Ribbentrop process, and turn it into coal into petrol. They're able to accomplish an awful lot. And can perform the world's first heart transplant under that regime. Wow. I'm not promoting them. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and build the third biggest rail network in the world.
And build the world's largest coal shipping port terminal in Port Richards. Okay. It's just, they did some amazing things. And they did that without even enabling much of their human capital to participate in the system.
Precisely.
Imagine that. Now in theory, there's no restrictions on utilizing all human capital South Africa has. Unfortunately, the ANC has been in the process of dumbing down South Africa's human capital, lowering standards to 30, 30, 30, and 40% in subjects to get past the matrix. Oh my God. It's
Yep.
Yikes.
Yeah, and the result of that is, and this is also something we can dive into. I believe, this is something Nolu's particularly passionate about as well. When you dumb down the education, eventually, when those kids graduate out of high school, they're too dumb to pick up a tertiary degree. They're too dumb to go to college, effectively. So the government now starts putting in programs that forces colleges to take them anyways, applies pressure to those same colleges to pass them. But when they have to get to the workplace, where they have to work for a salary, to a business owner who doesn't actually care that you have the piece of paper to your name, they care about your output. That business owner is quickly going to figure it out, and they've already done this, where they'll quickly figure out that actually it's not about your qualification. I just don't want to hire you because I don't trust that you can get the job done, because you and everyone from your year, you guys are of less quality than the same people who had hired 5 years ago.
Yep.
And the guys 5 years ago were of a lower quality than the guys 5 years before them.
Yep.
So what you then find is there are companies right now who are actively not even interested in employing anyone under the age of 28 years old or so, because they've already concluded amongst themselves that anyone under the age of 28 has received bad education. They can't send you an email with good grammar. If you ask them for a report, they can't put together a report. They can't crunch numbers. They don't want to work from 8 to 5 because that's now oppressive. You can't ask them to come into the office because, now, coming into the office Monday to Friday is not conducive to a good working environment now. When you do tell them to come into the office, they'll tell you that they want free food. They're actually making these demands when they're negotiating for salaries and remuneration now. They're asking for perks which aren't necessarily associated with the type of job. So employers are just going to say, if you're born before 1996, whatever, I'm not interested.
Yeah, and but it's not just that, Koketso. It's even worse than that. I mean, we've seen these stories of like Standard Bank and Old Mutual being forced to hire chartered accountants to train those that they've hired because they can't even do the job as an accountant and so on. They've got to bring outside. It's pathetic. And they have to hire these people who aren't qualified, or they risk their BEE status and their deals with the government, which is half of the economy. It's an ugly spiral. And when you don't have a society based on merit, this is what you get.
This is exactly what you get. If the society was based on merit, what's supposed to happen is small business would thrive.
Yep.
That's the usual that would happen.
Yep.
But without merit, only your big business can actually take the hit to continue doing business. And your big business can only do so much.
And
Firstly, they're expensive.
And economies that have traditionally grown and have become wealthy, whether it's Japan, better cases are the United States and Germany, it's small businesses, small and medium-sized enterprises that are the engine of growth in the job market and ingenuity. I mean, there was no Alphabet, there was no Google, there was no Facebook, Meta. None of this existed. Real Labs, none of it existed. It was all created by small entrepreneurs who built on it. It wasn't like the government came out and said, let's create Oracle. No, Larry Ellison did that and turned it into a multi-billion-dollar company over time. So that's the lifeblood. That's the growth. And besides, if you have a big corporation like General Motors that has 400,000 employees, you can't double that. But a small business with 10 or 20 employees can double and double and double and double and double and add more jobs. And there are millions of those businesses, and that's in America anyway. And that's the key. It's the small businesses. So it's really sad. There was another super chat came in from Paulie for 40 Rand. Said getting the ball rolling again in super chats. I think we've run that well dry, Paulie. That was a little while ago. Thank you for that. Yikes. Anyway.
Yeah, but this actually reminds me of what I mentioned last time I was on here, because I remember I'd come back from Tunisia earlier this year.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, actually not last time, but like two.
It's a while ago,
yeah. Yeah, and I'd made that example of, while I was there, I got tired of the hotel food, walked outside and got into a pizza place, small family business, guy running the shop with his nephew, and I think his wife was in the back cooking, tiny place, and the guy spoke a bit of English, we were chatting, and they were basically telling me that how, this is a family business and the little money they make from this little pizza place, which is in Tunis, right in the heart of town where a lot of the tourists are. They saw the opportunity to offer or have a small restaurant offering some familiar food to all the international people that go through there, which is exactly why I stepped out of the hotel to go to that particular place, because after a few days in a place, you start wanting, maybe craving something that you used to. And it was enough. Small business, it's enough to put food on the table, put the kids in school, and everything works. It's a small business. We don't have that in South Africa.
No, what you've got in South Africa is an oligarchy of huge corporations, which I'm not saying this is underhanded, but they've disguised. For instance, Edgar's owned CNA, and they owned the furniture store. I can't think of the name of it now, that's gone out of business, and they own like 5 other businesses. If you look at the food restaurants, Famous Brands owns most of the big names. I mean, John Dory is not exactly independent. The Cape Town Fish Market is not independent. KFC is not independent. These are not.
Joshua Doe, the furniture shop, owns Joshua Doe, Price and Pride, a bunch of furniture outlets. So you're right. Everything is grouped.
These are massive retailing and industrial groups that control sectors. The same in the banking sector. There are lots of banks, but there are 5 major banks that control what happens in South Africa. These are oligarchs. That's essentially what they are. It's an oligarchy, and it is an out of whack. It's not a free market system in the sense that there's competition, because these big corporations, that's why the lockdown was so successful in South Africa for the government's perspective.
Because big corporations toe the line.
And they could take the hit. They could survive. It's the small businesses. It's the lodges that were one person in a lodge. It's a small this, a small that. The small winemaker who wasn't big like one of the big ones like Boschendal, who couldn't survive because they didn't have all the money sitting in the bank. They didn't have all the revenue. They couldn't withstand this long duration, because they live from business cycle to business cycle, check to check to check, and you destroyed it. And that destroyed the lifeblood and the entrepreneurialism. And that's one of the things that South Africa lacks, is entrepreneurialism. That was one of the secret success of America, plus assimilation, plus the rule of law. The rule of law has gone out the window. Assimilation's going out the window now as we're being flooded by criminal alien invaders. And entrepreneurialism is going out because the government is protecting big businesses. They're pretending to go after them, but they protect and shield them with all this regulation, all these accounting requirements that are onerous. It's sad. It's really sad.
The red tape. Yeah. And then on top of that, for listed companies, they impose these, draconian rules, some of them draconian, for you to list your company. One of them, of course, being the employment equity laws. And then the really big guys who are listed companies, guess who's on their boards? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. It's so just a real quick joke here before I wrap up. It's Slippery Pickle says, I offered $2,000 for CNA. How did Edgar's get it when I outbid them? It's funny.
It's funny, yeah, but I mean, the fall of CNA is actually a very sad story.
It is. But it's not the first fall of CNA. It's collapsed 4 or 5 times over its history.
Yeah, but I mean, this last one was, that was it. This stake went to the heart now.
Yeah, it did.
CNA was the one place where you could get, let's call it a rare magazine. Yeah. One of those magazines and that you can't just find this anywhere.
A huge selection of magazines, school supplies, music, DVD, everything. And CNA was incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to go in there and, even as a 7-year-old, I'd go into CNA and just open the map book. When we used to have books of street maps.
Yeah.
I took interest in that.
Same here. I love maps. I have a huge collection of maps. It's very frustrating for me. I tell you, you know how hard it was for me to find an atlas the last time I was in the UK because the land ordinance, they do the maps. They just stopped printing because of COVID. They're hard to find.
Yeah. So so CNA had that place in my heart at least.
Yeah. Mine too, and I'm not even South African.
Yeah, now it's gone. Well, now there's PNA now, but PNA is almost exclusively a stationery shop.
Yeah, it's a stationery office supply, yeah. It's nice. I don't know if it's owned by Edcon. Edcon owns Edgar's and all those things. Yeah.
But I don't think so. Edcon is actually, I actually don't know how Edcon concluded.
I don't know either because they were they filed bankruptcy. They went business rescue. It's a euphemism. Bankruptcy. They went into bankruptcy. I don't know this because they're still operating. There's just Edgar's all over the place.
I'm pretty sure Edcon is dead for good, but someone must have bought Edgar's.
Bought Edgar's, yeah. But Edgar's,
someone must have bought Edgar's.
The thing about Edgar's though is that it has mass. So it generates a lot of revenue. Whether it generates profit depends on how well it's run. But they also have something that's very valuable, and that's the concession for MAC Cosmetics. It's the only place you find it is in Edgar's. And I think that's one of the things that may have made them attractive to people because that is a moneymaker.
And a couple of the luxury perfume brands as well.
Right, that's true. And I think maybe they're like one of the few distributors for a few of the top name things like Hoover's and things like that. A few things. But the one thing that definitely gets people in the door at Edgar's is MAC.
MAC Cosmetics.
Go to Menlyn. And go to the Edgar's there, and that MAC counter is right there at the front, and there's always like 10,000 women getting all doffed up right there, using the blotting paper and everything. So
I say Edgar's is probably RIP because I drove past the old headquarters in central Johannesburg there, and I drove past there, and I remember looking at it, and the old Edcon sign is still there, and that building used to be the epitome of commercial operations for retail South Africa.
Yeah.
It's a husk right now.
Yeah, I believe it.
It's a husk. And if someone told me the homeless have claimed it as their own, I would believe them.
Well, I'd be another one of those buildings in Joburg that's out of control. It's occupied by squatters.
Yeah, but I mean, this was Edcon's headquarters,
Yeah.
It meant something, and that's that. And I drove past it, looked at it, and just had that thought to myself that what a shame.
Well, it's a real shame to see CNA go away because Consolidated News Agents has a long, storied history. And, as an historian, it's kind of sad. I mean, I'm a historian not just of peoples and politics and conflict, but also of business. Yeah. And they had a long history, and it's just kind of sad to see them go away. There was still a CNA operating in Menlyn when I was there. Which surprised me, but the store is like reduced by 60%. So I don't know if it's like their last store or it's in bankruptcy and it's they're trying to buy. I don't know, but it was open when I was there last time. So, but it was really sad. They still had a number of magazines, but it wasn't like it was in the old days. So, and Exclusive doesn't carry the same number of magazines or the same ones. So it's kind of whatever. I guess it's
Yeah,
life. We have to move on from that. But
it is what it is.
it is what it is. Koketso, I'd love to stay longer, but I've got my radio show tonight, and I got to prep for that. So I want to thank you, not to cut you off, but I mean we can go longer if you want. But I want to thank you for coming on. This one's been a blast. I really enjoyed it, not just because of all the super chats, but we've really had some fun topics to talk about tonight.
Yeah.
And I'm loving the beard, man. It's looking good on you there. I want to share that with you. So anything you want to share with folks, or any last comments you want to get in before we wrap up?
Yeah, normally I can think very quickly, but it's been a hell of a week. Yeah, but I think really just, after talking to a lot of people, I do get quite a few comments from guys telling me that, listen, everything I do, that is, not everything, but what I'm doing, that is simply showing my face and having an opinion and sharing it, that actually goes a long way. So to people watching this, particularly Black South Africans, and this is where I'll use race as the qualifier here, I think there needs to be more people like me. I know we exist and I know we are many, but there's far too many that prefer to just sit in the shadows, and it's over fear of whatever. It could be fear of losing income, fear of being ostracized by society, etc. That fear element, as long as you have it, people will use it against you. And we're getting to the point where, we don't have much left of a country to fight for. It sounds very pessimistic, but it's the truth. And again, those of us who've seen how elsewhere everything else is improving, but back home it's not. Yeah, it really puts things in perspective. So yeah, I just want to maybe encourage those who just want to get out. I mean, I had a guy who DM'd me once on X, formerly known as Twitter, saying, hey, listen, how do you, how can I grow my following? And, I'm approaching 10,000 followers now. I haven't exactly been keeping track. I can tell you now that before the lockdowns, I was beneath 1,500, I think. But when we're in lockdown, suddenly you've got a lot of time on your hands to really say what you mean. And now it's 3 years later and I'm approaching the 10,000 mark, and I'm in no way a professional analyst or whatever. But that just speaks, I've got journalists following me. I've got business people following me. I didn't ask for any of that. But the reason they're finding me is I'm one of the scarcely few voices who's actually willing to say something that is against the narrative. And I wish there was a lot more of us. So to those who are thinking about it and are worried about XYZ, don't be. Don't be. But having that fear, that is what the left depends on. They depend on you being scared of voicing your opinion so that they can own the narrative. So don't be. The more of us come out, the more things will start to reach the true balance, the true reflection of what society really thinks. And I'm glad for it. I mean, I've got ANC ministers who are now following me as well, unprovoked. So it's not I follow them, then they follow me back. No. I just opened my phone one day and I'm like, oh, there's a minister following me now. No. I wonder what they saw that made them click on follow. If they're spying on me to see what their political opponents are thinking, then all the better. But yeah, to those who are thinking about it, really, we need to have our voices more heard. Understand not everyone can stomach it. The insults I get on a daily basis would put a lot of people off, and that's perfectly fine. Some people work in industries where your opinion can actually undo you professionally, so I understand that. But for those who are like me, who work in industries where it's fully meritocracy based, and and really your opinion, you could have whatever opinion or whatever. At the end of the day, you've got a job to do your job. If you've got that privilege, then it is worth saying something occasionally, just so you don't let those who are really working overtime to bring down our country get all the airtime in the world. So yeah, that's my only encouragement for now. But yeah, I've had people DM me saying, asking how they can be a little bit more vocal, etc. And I really don't have advice. I don't have advice. I didn't go through training. I didn't buy bots to increase the number of followers. I've never been suspended. I've never received a strike, because when you stick to the principles, even big tech can't come back and say you have violated policy 12.B clause C, because everyone knows what right is from wrong, you know. But yeah, I'm going to stop talking.
No, it's all right. But I will. Everything I agree with 100% is well stated. The one thing is, the last thing I'd say that yes and no. When no children are involved in a video, there's no allusion to children. There's no violence. There's no nudity, and it's simply the CEO of the Restaurants Association of South Africa encouraging South Africans to go to the restaurant, and I get a video strike taken down for child safety policy violation 4 times in the same day. You can be correct and follow the rules, and you can still be a victim of YouTube. So that's how big a target some people have paying their back. But anyway, Koketso, those are brilliant words. And you know, there are, the thing about this is that most Black South Africans by nature are conservative and are people of faith and believe in family and extended family. And that's why it's so distressing to see the left driving this thing and people being quiet. And there are a lot of voices like yours. And yes, some people are in industries where if they open their mouth, they're done. They lose their job. They're canceled. But I would say that we know there's a lot of people out there. I mean, I know many Black South Africans who are like-minded, like you. Of course, you know Dumo. We know Big Daddy Liberty, Sile Nkobise. We also Unati Kwaza, Nolu, Nzuzo. There are more out there, but it's difficult to take that step out there. And I'm glad that we've made the acquaintance some time ago now, and that we've collaborated on something. Ooh, that sounds like, you know, with the Nazis in France after World War II, collaborating. We collaborate, but we've worked together. Let's change it to that. We worked together, and I've enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun. So you know, we took a photo when we did that meet and greet in Pretoria, and remember it was with you and me and Nzuzo and Dumo, and we took the picture, and I told everybody I'm the one that's pigmentationally challenged. So, but thanks a lot. It's been a lot of fun to do it again. This has been a long one, longer than we normally do. Usually do an hour and a half. This has been 2.5 hours. Thanks a lot. And to the super chats came in. Thank you all so much. It was nice to see those things raining for a moment. It almost reminded me of the old days. That seems like so long ago now. But thank you all so much. If you enjoy this conversation, tell people about it. Share the link. Let people know about it. And we won't be able to do this next week or the week after because I'll be doing consulting, so I'm not available at the time we do this. But maybe 3 weeks down the road, we can try it again. It sounds like Koketso is kind of settled for the moment. Maybe he'll be back. And hopefully we'll get Dumo back because Dumo's deep voice, man, I always enjoy that when he's on here. He's got such a deep voice.
Yeah, he's always had it, by the way. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, wait, look, you know, on camera, you don't know what people look like. But, man, I'll tell you what, when the first time I met Dumo in person, I felt it's like when I met Victor Matfield. I'm tall, but I stood next to Victor Matfield and I felt like a dwarf. That guy is, I mean, he's not just tall, but he's like, you know, and that's how Dumo is. I mean, he's a force. So he could be a linebacker in the National Football League. I'm telling you, man, he's a force. Anyway, Koketso, kia laboa. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate it. And we'll chat again soon.
Soon. Thanks, Chris. And thanks to all the viewers. Galebo.
All right, folks, y'all take care, and we'll catch you here next time on Nako. Cheers, everybody.